What's up, nerds? It's Havoc, and I've got an updated battle group tier list video for you guys today. We're going to be ranking everything S through D, and I'm actually going to do two lists today. We're going to break this into small team games, or like 1v1s and 2v2s, and then the back half of this video, we're going to reset and kind of stack rank everything for team games, 3v3s and 4v4s. I am going to go through in detail all of the units and abilities, and so the back half of the video where we talk about the team game setup and the team game stack rank is going to be a little bit shorter, because we're going to talk about all the details of the abilities and everything in the opening part. So, starting out, we're going to start with UK forces. We're going to go faction by faction, so UK forces, US forces, Wehrmacht, and then the Deutsche Afrika Korps, DAK. So starting out, we've got the Australian battle group for the British forces, Australian Defence Battle Group, and we're just going to crack open both sides here. So, in the context of 1v1s and 2v2s, Australian Defence Battle Group has faced quite a few nerfs in the most recent patches, but is still very strong, like very, very good. Lots of great utility in this battle group, lots of really strong abilities, and good units as well. So I'll talk a little bit about like some of the units and some of the differences with the most recent patch that are having an impact on the overall ranking. But we'll start with the Australian light infantry section. So these guys got a minor nerf in the most recent patch. They got a nerf specifically to the snipe ability. So the snipe ability on Vet 2 used to instantly kill any infantry model, and they have since reduced that to do 110 damage to one model only. So you're no longer guaranteed to kill on snipe once you hit Vet 2. Now you're only guaranteed to do 110 damage, and that's before damage reduction. So that's going to have an impact as well. Yeah, cost should be 300. Yeah, this is incorrect. So the cost on the COH3 stats website is not correct. The cost is actually 300. These guys were also impacted by the most recent change to call-in infantry. So starting the game, call-in infantry used to be available right as soon as you selected it, but they implemented I believe it's like 45-second cooldown for all starting infantry. And this has been, honestly, it's a fantastic change, because some of the tempo gameplay is a term that is used pretty consistently at the high level, which basically just means like flooding the map with units as quickly as possible. That was very easy to do with these call-in units like Australian Light Infantry, Coastals, Bersaglieri, anything that's a mainline replacement that usually comes in from off-map. These were very good for that reason. Now, they're still great. I think a lot of people get confused about how these guys are to be used. They behave a lot more like riflemen than they do infantry sections in the early game. Once you get your scoped Lee Enfields upgrade, then they behave much more consistently like you would expect an infantry section to. But their DPS curve is very curved. It's very like a very high DPS at close range, much lower than an infantry section at long range. But as you upgrade them with the scoped Lee Enfields, it pushes that maximum range DPS out and makes it much more flat as you progress. So in the context of 1v1s and 2v2s, typically you're going to go for the 2-pounder anti-tank gun. I have seen some situations where players will go for defensive tactics, but I would say at my level, like, I hardly ever see people using this, and for good reason. It's usually not a great idea to invest a big chunk of your resources, usually what would be enough for like something like a light vehicle, just to lock down one area of the map. And usually these are pretty easily countered by like an anti-tank gun, for example. So most of the time you're going to see players going for 2-pounder, and 2-pounder obviously complements the Australian light infantry section very well, because the Aussies do not have a snare, unlike the standard infantry section. And the 2-pounder little bit different than the 6-pounder in a few different ways. The first one is that it does 120 damage per shot instead of 160. And what that means in plain English is something like a 221 will take 2 shots to kill, but like a 251, other medium/light vehicles will be between 3 and 4 shots. Now, it does have a faster setup time and fire rate than other anti-tank guns, which is part of what makes it so useful against light vehicles. And it also has access to a snare ability at Vet 1. I'm actually just going to crack this open. The target weak point ability, and this is going to slow your target by 50% and disable the weapons, which is really nice. And it's also guaranteed to penetrate enemy armor, so you're always getting that effect. You're always getting the damage. You're always getting the stun effect. So regardless of whether you're shooting, whether you're shooting at a Kradschützen or a King Tiger, it's always going to go through. So the 2-pounder is a great augment to your early game with the Australian light infantry section. Now, defensive tactics. So you have available to you the Bofors AA gun. The Bofors is more effective than the Polston in terms of raw DPS to aircraft specifically. So if you're playing Australians and you're playing maybe against like a Luftwaffe player, a Bofors might be a good investment, especially in your backline. I would say especially in the context of team games. But for the most part, I don't find myself using defensive tactics too often. This is where it gets really interesting though. So you have the choice now between vehicle over repair, which used to be like wildly overpowered, but has since been pretty significantly nerfed in recent patches. And you have hold the line. Both of these abilities, super useful, very strong late game abilities. I will say vehicle over repair got some significant nerfs in the last patch. So last patch, it used to grant 120 extra health instead of 100. And the over repair process only took 5 seconds instead of 20. And now, obviously, it's a much longer time investment to get the over repair effect on your vehicles. And it's good because in the previous patch, we were seeing a lot of players kind of just like go and do a lot of poking with their vehicles and then just kind of come back and over repair, and they were never really in any danger. And because the players were able to do it so quickly with a handful of engineers, you're pretty much impossible time trying to take out enemy vehicles before they hit critical mass. Now, obviously, it requires a significant time investment from your engineers and other units to get the vehicle over repair going. And even when you have it, it's not going to save you, an extra 20, I guess, HP, which is going to be enough for a snare or like an AT rifle penetration or anything like that. The extra 100 HP not going to be quite as helpful as the 120 is. Now, there are some other implications that are playing into how useful this is. I will say, for example, like the tungsten rounds available to the Panzer IIIs, giving them 150 damage against something like a Crusader, for example. Vehicle over repair, pretty crucial at being able to kind of like get the most out of your Crusaders, because otherwise they're going to be 4-tapped by a Panzer III. I do think the Crusader's in kind of like not a great place at the moment, but vehicle over repair does still help with that. Now, moving on to hold the line, this ability, I think this ability is still like wildly overpowered. So you can see here, temporarily reduces the damage taken by team weapons and placements in buildings by 40% and heals them for 4 health per second when active. So in plain English, like, I guess what you could say is like, it's about 25 seconds to heal a team weapon model from 0 to 100. And how this is going to actually impact your breakpoints is you're going to see your team weapons are able to take like 4 or 5 more shots each, but then on top of that, you also have this like damage reduction that they get. So it makes your team weapons like borderline immortal, unless you're just getting pounded by like everything that your opponent has. So this ability is like fantastic when you're being dived by enemy armor, hit by enemy artillery. and you're trying desperately to maintain control of your team weapons and not cause them to decrew or not lose them, this ability is amazing, and it's relatively inexpensive as far as defensive abilities go. And obviously, the more team weapons you have, the more payoff there's going to be in using this hold the line ability. Now, moving over to the logistical supremacy side, the CMP supply run truck. Now, this used to be bugged. I actually think it still is on the current patch. So you can see here, you could deploy a supply truck to gather resources to the target fuel or munitions point. Truck will leave the map if the point is contested, captured, or after the resources are delivered. And then you can see enemies destroy loaded trucks or rewarded the resources instead. This ability is still very good. It's currently bugged, so that regardless of how far you travel from the base, for the most part, this is always going to be worth it. I believe it's 125 manpower to use this ability. Most of the players that I see using it are typically using it on fuel income. I have seen some cases of players using it for like large sums of munitions, but honestly, within this battle group, there's not a lot of munition sinks, and even the ones that you have really aren't that compelling. So for the most part, you're going to be using this to like catapult your fuel into the lead over your opponent. So you can use this on a very safe territory, like just outside of your base, and you're still going to get close to, if not already, the maximum fuel value. Being, in this case, it's going to be like somewhere between 24 and 32, most likely. Is the truck better than a cache? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because a cache, if you think about it, so a cache will take about... in order to yield the same value of resources, it'll probably take you between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on how far away it is. And that's using the strength and economy cache, which is dramatically reduced in cost. I would say for the most part, the supply run is generally better, but obviously there's the risk element to it, right? Because caches, you don't have to worry about them getting sniped. If your opponent's paying attention and they drop like a Fallschirmjäger or something in the back line and like take this out as you're doing your supply run, then they're going to steal those resources. So yeah, that's a great observation. Cache is definitely going to be better in the context of team games, but if you're being selfish and trying to spend your manpower on specifically your own fuel, the supply truck is going to be better. Moving on to the second line, we've got strength and economy and our artillery tripwire flares. These are the cheapest caches that the allies have access to, and they're also the most beefy. So they take quite a while to take down, especially with like small arms or other types of weapons. But this is like easily the best cache that the allies have access to. Now, I'll say like the air and sea cache can be a little bit more compelling just because you don't have to invest the micro tax of sending an engineer to go and build it. But it is cheaper to use this type of cache specifically. So in the context of team games, this is like virtually always a better choice. Even in 1v1s, I still see some of these propping up from time to time. The artillery tripwire flares, I feel like this ability is a little bit underrated. Most people don't recognize that, like, in order to use this well, you basically need to anticipate where your opponent is going to be capturing the territory from. And it's really one of two effective munition sinks in this battle group if you're going for vehicle over repair and not for hold the line. And we'll talk about these two in a second. But artillery tripwire flares, this is like a good use by your engineers or your Aussie squads to soften up a target that's going to capture a territory point. And I think particularly useful in like wide maps in 1v1s, where basically what it's going to allow you to do is like soften up your opponent as they go and start capturing the territory. So that when you actually engage them with one of your units, then they're probably going to have taken some damage. And are going to have a more difficult time contesting that territory. Moving on to Charge Creeping Barrage and the Archer Tank Destroyer. So I think in general, team game or 1v1, I feel like the archer is virtually always better. The charge creeping barrage, you really have to like, you have to finesse this ability to get really good use out of it. Most players I see using this ability kind of incorrectly, because what they do is they tend to try to like drop it on in the middle of a target, when what you want to do is have it start on target and go backwards from them, so that you're kind of catching them on the retreat path or on the reverse path. And the only way to effectively do that is by dropping the artillery when you have vision beyond what your actual target is. And that usually requires reconnaissance flares or just like being deep in enemy territory. But yeah, effectively you want to start the barrage on top of your target and then kind of have it backtrack towards the path on which your opponent's going to be reversing or retreating their infantry. So overall, Australian Battlegroup, easily A tier. This is definitely one of the stronger British battle groups at the moment. Lots of great utility between hold the line, I should say, and even like the 360 degree 17 pounder from defensive tactics is quite good. Vehicle over repair can be used on teammates' vehicles as well. And the Archer tank destroyer, it is probably like the best tank destroyer option as far as the casemates go, and I would say for its cost as well. It's a little bit higher rate of fire and a little bit more mobility than the Firefly. But obviously it is a little bit squishier in turn, and it does not have a turret like the Firefly does. It's a fixed gun casemate vehicle. So a little bit going to be a little bit more difficult to use in that context. But I'd say on the maneuverability side, and because it has a relatively quick reverse speed, this unit in general, I think is going to be a better choice over the charge creep and barrage. So yeah, between, you know, your anti-tank capabilities, Australians are very capable mainline replacement. Caches, very, very strong in a 1v1 context. I still think Aussies probably have the best scaling of all of the infantry units as far as the main lines go. And this isn't like mid-tier main lines. I'm not talking about like the 1.5. Before patch nerfs, yeah, this was easily an S tier battle group. But I would say post the nerfs to vehicle over repair, post the nerfs to Australian light infantry section snipe ability specifically, these guys probably dropped from S tier to A tier, but still very, very good, still very strong, very competitive, and a great choice overall. Moving on to Air and Sea. Collapse this one down. We'll go and look at Air and Sea. Okay, so we've got and Naval Blockade actually got a little bit of a rework, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So we've got two categories: Royal Navy Support and Royal Air Force. I'll say in general, I'd say this battle group's probably in like the middle section, but we'll kind of break down the different components of it right now. So commandos are in a fantastic spot. These guys have changed a lot since probably since the last time I did this battle group video. They've effectively been given new demolition charges. So prior to, when would it have been? Maybe 1.6, no, I actually think it was 1.9. So they reworked some of the demolition charges, and most of them were made visible. And for a while, the commando section was in the same category where they could plant demo charges, but they were visible. And recently, more recently, they were given access to the SSF equivalent demolition charge, which is invisible. And it's fantastic. Like the invisible demo charge is really what makes these guys really threatening. On top of that, they have some fantastic abilities. I'm actually just going to crack open the unit. So they've got a grenade. They do have a snare handy. Concealment smoke, which allows you to break suppression or pin, which can be really, really nice for like soft retreating or repositioning after getting caught out by a machine gun. And then the ambush bonuses that they get are incredible. And of course, they get these hidden demolition charges, which we've talked about. But yeah, overall, this is a really, really strong unit. It is very micro heavy. There's a lot of micro attacks to get really good use out of this unit. But once you get them to like Vet 2, Vet 3, they're terrifying. They'll beat anything with an ambush bonus. Between how healthy the squad is, 630 HP for the total squad, and the strength of the ambush bonus, these guys get really, really scary in the late game. The main issue with them, obviously, is they're a CQC squad. So, you know, trying to use them in the late game when your opponent is potentially blobbing around with like detector units or flares or, you know, what have you. I would say these guys are much more difficult to use in team games because they're so much more congested. There's a lot less opportunities for them to skulk around and find good targets. But in 1v1s and 2v2s, these guys are really, really good. So big fan of the commando section in general. I know they actually buffed the commando section paradrop recently. So they gave the commando support section an upgrade to its strafe ability. These guys are great long-range support infantry. They come with I believe it's a Vickers K LMG, which is quite good. Ambush bonus, and then of course that along with the strafe that they get is quite good. Also being able to reinforce commando units on the field, including themselves as well as your commando sections, make them a nice addition to you know, if you're playing commandos on the front lines, and especially in a team game context where you want to be avoiding running back to base as much as possible. Having one of each of these guys is usually a good idea. M1 pack howitzer paradrop. I don't really think the M1s are in a great spot right now. I feel like in general, for the most part, mortars are almost always better than these. The rate of fire is better on mortars. They're a little bit more consistent in terms of the damage that they deal. They're a little bit more precise in terms of their ability to hit targets. The only advantage that the pack howitzer has is range. And really, if you're looking for artillery with longer range, you may as well go for one of the mid-tier artillery units. Something like the land mattress, which we'll actually talk about a little bit later, or a bishop, of course. And then you've got these two late game abilities. Now I still think these are pretty effective. If your opponent has anti-aircraft, they are gonna, you know, lose effectiveness pretty significantly. Incendiary bombing run is probably what you're gonna want to lean towards if your opponent is really heavy on the anti-aircraft. This could be because they're playing like the Kriegsmarine Battlegroup, or because they built a lot of Whirlwinds or something like that. But if you use the anti-tank rocket loader and your opponent has a lot of AA, you're just going to get no value out of this. So in those cases, I usually recommend going for incendiary bombing running, or better yet, saving for the other side of the support tree abilities, which we'll talk about here. So starting out, we've got supply surplus. Now, most of you will probably be familiar with these as the auto building UK caches. They are a little bit cheaper. They're not the cheapest caches available, but they are very easy to put up because you can construct them straight onto the territory point without the assistance of an engineer, which is fantastic. They did recently rework this new ability, Naval Blockade. However, I still don't really think it's that worth it. Considering some of the other abilities that can be used, things like sound the alarm or even like booby traps on certain territory points, are both more effective than this and cost less munitions overall. So I do think this probably needs a little bit more tuning. I feel like supply surplus is pretty much always still the better choice between these two. Next we have the Centaur. I do still kind of feel like the Centaur hasn't found a great place. There has been some significant changes to it. It's been given quite a bit more mobility. It also was given Hesh rounds as a toggleable option for the Centaur. And basically what it does is allow you to cripple an enemy vehicle using the Hesh round. So I believe it decreases accuracy and rate of fire. You can see here in the bottom of the description. Decreases accuracy and rate of fire on its target. And this could be really good when you're planning to push like a big heavy tank. Something like a KT or an Elephant or a Tiger. It's really good at like leading the charge and opening with the Hesh rounds because of the debuffs that it applies. But overall, I don't really see a lot of use of the Centaur at the moment. I think if the firing arc was maybe a little bit lower or the projectile speed was a little bit faster, then it might see more use. but it is still possible to kind of like kite this a little bit. And obviously, you know, almost no dueling capability for tanks in and of itself, which is a bit of a challenge. Next, we've got the assault flares, and this is really where like this battle group in particular shines, especially in team games, but also in 1v1s. Both of these abilities are incredibly strong. So you've got naval bombardment. This is probably like the most damage in a concentrated area of an ability in the game. Maybe I'd say it might be a little bit close with the bombing run, but you can pretty much guarantee if there's a fixed position inside the area of effect of naval bombardment, it's going to disappear. It's going to die. It's going to get eviscerated. Now, it is a little bit expensive. Like this ability, it's as far as naval bombardments go, I think the new Kriegsmarine naval bombardment is like 180 munitions. Now, granted, it doesn't deal as much concentrated damage. The Krieg bombardment fires, I think, 2 shells 3 times before a volley of smoke. And this one shells, I believe it's 5 or 6 shells in 3 volleys. So a lot more damage over an area, but very, very, very expensive on the munition side. So I don't typically end up taking this in most contexts. There are some where it's like my opponent's really, really dug in and I really need to like dismantle a defensive position. Maybe I'll use naval bombardment, but honestly, I think incendiary bombing run might actually be better for that because it does a little bit larger area disruption. And obviously the after effect of burning is good for area denial, whereas the naval bombardment, once it fires, it's over, right? But assault flares, we haven't talked about. Assault flares, super powerful, especially in a team game context, because it's going to light up the entire front line for your whole team. And it's going to give your infantry some crazy speed bonuses and rate of fire bonuses that are going to make them more effective on the attack. And this is really just like the go button ability. Like if you ever need an ability to help signal your team to attack, this is it. And this is part of the reason I love it. I think it's a lot of fun ability, especially to use in team games. And there's some incredible synergy with some of the units, including commandos. I actually noticed that at Vet 3, the commando speed bonus that they get from ambush actually stacks with assault flares. So you get like 100% increase in movement speed, which is absolutely crazy. So yeah, I think like some still really powerful abilities in the late game of Air and Sea, but I will say like in general, the units themselves and some of the early game options, they are not nearly as strong as some of the other UK choices. And so for that reason, I'm actually going to put Air and Sea in the B category. And this is probably going to be surprising to some people. But I would say like the best parts of this battle group are the late game abilities and the late game abilities and maybe the caching. Everything else requires a lot of a lot of attention to get decent payoff. And frankly, there are just other battle groups where you can apply less effort and get better rewards. So I think it really comes down to like, you know, how good this battle group can be really gets changed based on like your own ability to execute on some of the units within the battle group. But generally speaking, in terms of the payoff for the effort, it's probably in the B category. So that's why we're putting it there. Moving on to heavy armor. So heavy armor has seen a fair number of changes as well. Which field logistics. So there are some great elements of Armor Battle Group that make this play style with the UK forces quite unique. I'll say like the light vehicle withdrawn refit, for example. This is a great way for you to just continuously apply pressure throughout the game using light vehicles with UK. And I'll see a lot of players go for like double or triple dingo in using this battle group and going for this light vehicle withdrawn refit because they can just continuously recycle their units and keep scaling them up and scaling them up and building momentum, and then building critical mass of vehicles. And you can only do that with light vehicle withdrawn refit, because otherwise you have to wait until tier 4 before you could do a refit of a vehicle. And so being able to have a really dominant early game with something like a double dingo opener in the team game context can be very good. I actually have a how-to battle group video where I used like a Humber and then I would refit it into a Stuart. I still think that's something that you can get great value of in using this battle group to do that. Moving on to the next section, we've got choice between radio net, which I'm actually seeing a lot less of, and I think it's because people are starting to recognize the power of the AA Crusader. This thing is absolutely devastating to infantry. This is probably, no, not probably. This is definitely stronger against infantry than a Whirlwind, which is saying a lot because the Whirlwind in 1v1 and 2v2 is quite difficult to deal with. Especially when it's coming in from a flank or something and you're not able to lock it down with like snares or an AT gun or deter it from diving you. If you get a Whirlwind on top of you, it's usually like you're in trouble. The game is potentially over. And the AA Crusader has even more of that effect. Same health pool as the Whirlwind, more DPS on the main cannon, and it's actually much faster too than the Whirlwind. So you're going to get great value out of using these in tandem with, you know, to help you protect your AT guns, for example, from an enemy infantry blob. This is amazing at deterring enemy infantry blobs. They will just get eviscerated if they push into this. And if you have 2 of them, even more so. And because of their mobility, you're able to, you know, if you find an opening to catch your opponent on a retreat path, very, very easy and very consistent at being able to pick up wipes on enemies. So quite strong set of abilities on the right hand side, and then we do have some great late game abilities in recon artillery and designate targets. Both of these abilities, I think recon artillery is probably a little bit overrated, to be honest. Designate targets a little bit underrated, probably more so in the team game context. I can see recon artillery being used more often because the plane that comes with recon artillery is so much beefier than the designate targets plane. You can drop like 5 volleys of artillery, even if your opponent has an anti-aircraft gun on the field. And I've seen in a lot of cases, like people will actually use this on top of an anti-aircraft gun just to take it out. So more good, strong late game abilities in both categories. And on the left-hand side, we've got heavy armor support. So on this side, we've got rigorous vehicle training and engineered detachments. I'll say like engineered detachments has become a lot less popular recently. I think that's because like sappers as a unit or the Royal Engineer Squad has been power crept quite a bit by other units in the game. Most of the Axis main lines have been buffed across the board in terms of their lethality, their ability to hit targets that are at long range. And so it actually makes it very difficult to use sappers unless you're catching out an opponent in CQC. And so for that reason, I think that's part of the reason we don't see as much much use of sappers or as much use of engineered detachments as before. And on the other hand, rigorous vehicle training, this is just great. This is like all around, this is very helpful. Obviously if you're playing this battle group, the expectation is you're going to play with a lot of armor. It could be a lot of Stuarts, a lot of Humbers, whatever. And the extra veterancy gain, especially when combined with training, because it does stack with training. You're going to get some really, really quick vetting vehicles using rigorous vehicle training. Then you also have forward repair assembly. This is the only area of effect vehicle repair ability that the UK forces has access to. Every other faction has some other means of like basically repairs en masse. For US forces is Mechanized Support Center with the area of effect upgrade. You've got the repair bunker for the Wehrmacht. You've got emergency repair kits for the DAK. This is the only way to repair multiple vehicles using a structure. And so for that reason, it can be quite valuable, especially when used in tandem with both of these. Well, more specifically, I'd say the Churchills in the late game. And I'll say so looking at the Black Prince and the standard Churchill for heavy tank, the Churchills have probably come down a couple of notches, and it's actually not because anything that they've done to the Churchill, but more so what they've done to some of the Axis units and some of the more popular Axis strategies, specifically tungsten rounds for the DAK has been, obviously the DAK armory rework was pretty substantial, and tungsten rounds it has probably emerged as the most common tier 3 upgrade. And that's giving armor penetration and damage to DAK vehicles. And that's making something like the Churchill just much more of a liability than it was on the previous patch, because now they're having to deal with all these DAK vehicles that can hit it really hard, penetrate it really consistently using tungsten rounds. And so I've seen like Martyrs, P3s, what have you. Like basically if you're up against DAK, you're kind of having a hard time if you're using one of these two units, and so for that reason they've kind of become a bit of a liability and therefore not so popular. So I'd say like overall this battle group is full of really good things, but whether you're playing a 1v1 or a big team game, kind of suffers from the same problems with the late game armor options, that is that like they're basically too slow and too easy, like basically too easy of a target to be able to lock down and cause a lot of problems for. Now, I'd say Wehrmacht probably has a more difficult time dealing with something like a Black Prince or a Churchill, but DAK, like they're well equipped to be able to handle both of these options. And so I'm actually going to take armored, and for that reason, those reasons, I'm probably going to put armored in C. It's not awful, but it's certainly not great. And there's a lot of weaknesses, especially when it comes to the units. Now, it does make up for it with some decent like late game abilities, but if we're talking about late game abilities, there are better options that outshine some of the ones that are offered in Armored Battlegroup. And so for that reason, I'm putting it in the C category. Moving on to Canadians. My personal favorite, I'm a little biased, might be because I am Canadian. But for the Canadian Shock Battle Group, this battle group has so much of the sauce, and I'll talk about why here. So whether you're playing in 1v1s or team games, attacking spirit and offensive resupply, being able to benefit both your own units and your teammates, is just incredible value. Being able to throw free grenades, fire free grenades constantly, or in combat healing for all of your infantry is just like insane value. And obviously this is even more true when you're playing in small games and you're capturing points more often. You're usually triggering these bonuses more. But both of these, as far as like 1 CP abilities go, these are both like incredible options, and probably among some of the strongest 1 CP ability options in the game overall. Moving on to the Canadian Shock section. I have actually come a long way in how I feel about these guys. So they did get a pretty significant buff to their CQC damage in the last patch. I think it was about 20%, and they're still not a CQC unit. They're not like an Assault Grenadier. They're not like a Panzer Grenadier. But they do have a bit of a niche in which they shine. And I'll kind of talk about what the problem of the unit is too. But the part where the unit shines is really just like being the meat that is in your opponent's face while your other units are dealing DPS from long range. So I love supporting these guys with like a couple of Bren sections, because the Bren sections will just tear down whatever is in front of them from max range, and the Canadians will make space, because as long as you have the ability to like dislodge a machine gun or force an enemy out of a cover position by threatening the gammon bomb, these guys are just going to be super useful at just being the meat, just taking damage, being really beefy. And once they hit Vet 2 and get that damage reduction, oh boy, these guys get like really tanky. And I've actually come a long way in my opinions of the upgrades. Now, I still have my own opinion, which is like I personally think that this 2-inch mortar package should just be built into the unit, as like, you know, any Canadian can use this, and then they should be given a new weapon upgrade option. Whether it's like, I don't know, 3 Thompsons or 2 bars or Johnsons or a Vickers K or something. I don't know. But I personally, I would like to see, you know, I would like to see, I think that would make the Canadians more popular than they are as a unit. But I can understand like how some people might feel, you know, maybe it's a bit egregious that like any of them can use. I would say obviously I think this cost would also have to go up a bit. But yeah, in general, that's kind of how I'm feeling about Canadians. But like I said, I've kind of come a long way in how I feel about them. The Piat is okay. It's still not nearly as responsive as something like a Panzerschreck or a bazooka. The aim time is quite long for it. But if you can get on top of like, you know, a light armor vehicle or hold down a building using a Piat, like you're going to pretty consistently do very respectable damage to whatever vehicle that you hit with it. It does do 160 damage similar to the Panzerschreck. But yeah, the value of these guys is really like being the front line, and all of their abilities are kind of contributing to that. They don't have a lot of like upfront DPS in terms of their rifle weapons that they use, or the Piat even against infantry. But between the Gammon bombs and the 2-inch mortar package, which I've been using a lot more consistently, I've been seeing a lot of Axis players spamming things like the 2-centimeter flat cannon from tier 2 for Wehrmacht, or machine gun positions. The 2-inch mortar package, especially when combined with the incendiary munitions upgrade, it just makes such short work of those and allows your Canadians to create space to then go and close the gap and try to get on top of whatever team weapons those are. So yeah, I'd say like 2-inch mortar package, I've come a long way. I feel a lot better about this unit than I did last patch. These guys all around are quite good. Maybe not what we would expect from like a shock unit, or, you know, what we would call maybe a shock infantry unit. But these guys have great value in their abilities. And once they hit Vet 3, then they get like really, really devastating. So as far as, you know, some of the British infantry options go, and like frontline units that are going to help create space and synergize well with some of the other abilities we were talking about in the Canadian battle group, like attacking spirit or offensive resupply, the Canadians have all that, and they come out super early at 1 CP. So very, very good choice. Now we've got point assault and smoke operation. They've done a bit of a rework of point assault. I still feel like smoke operation is probably the best choice in most contexts, because it does a really fantastic job of disrupting your opponent's backline. You know, smoking the AT guns, smoking their vehicles, smoking team weapons, smoking emplacements, like everything gets hit by smoke operation. And that creates incredible openings for units like the Churchill Crocodile and your Canadians to push in and get in the face of your opponent and be a pain. So overall, very, very excellent left tree. Point assault, not too bad. I'd say like the damage reduction that you get is really nice. It's really, really good when you like have to attack and dislodge an enemy from an area. You just have to keep in mind the effective distance of this ability, because you basically have to be pretty close to the point in question if you're going to get any value out of this. And then obviously the duration being refreshed, if you capture it, allows you to kind of continue the attack and continue to build up momentum. And so the nice part is as well, like this also affects friendly infantry. So whether it's your infantry or your teammates, you're going to get great value out of this either way. I just, you know, like I said, I'm a little more partial to smoke operation, but both of these abilities are powerful and quite good. Moving on to the incendiary weapons side. So we've got 2 options here. Burnout, they've actually dropped to 1 CP. This actually used to be reversed. Incendiary munitions used to be 2 CP. Burnout used to be 1. They've actually flipped it. I still think burnout is effective. However, I do kind of miss the trade-off of incendiary munitions by selecting burnout. But being able to shut down your opponent's economy and continuously harass it with this ability, burn down caches, you know, shutting down. I actually think you can also use this on the Kriegsmarine points, the hard points, I should say. So this can be really great for disrupting your opponent's backline using this ability, but you are giving up quite a bit by using that instead of the incendiary munitions. So kind of like, you know, a difficult trade-off to make. I find myself leaning most of the time more towards incendiary munitions because it just turns your rifle grenades, your gammon bombs absolutely nuclear. It just makes them super, super strong. And the burn damage and the ticking is usually just enough to knock your opponent off the map completely. So yeah, very, very strong. Moving on to pyrotechnics, even more OP effects on your flamethrowers, on the crocodile, on your incendiary munitions, like all this stuff gets affected by pyrotechnics. And then you've got two options in demolition engineering. I've been using this a lot less often. I think it kind of suffers from the same problems that sappers already had, which is like there's been a lot of power creep of the other Wehrmacht infantry units, and so these guys are just a lot more fragile and difficult to use. Can still be good in like an urban context, especially if maybe you've lost your sappers from the early game and you're not planning to go for croc for one reason or another. But otherwise I would say, Otherwise, I would say like the Churchill is just incredible. It's just so much better. Like it's so crazy good. And the timing on it. So a quick overview of the timings that have changed when it comes to the heavy tanks for all factions. The Churchill Crocodile probably remains the quickest and easiest to access heavy tank. And I'm putting it in its own category, separate from like, you know, I'm not talking about like Matildas. I'm not talking about regular Churchills. I'm talking about like the super heavies. I'm putting it in the super heavy category, even though it's not. But this thing is devastating at killing infantry. Like it might be better than anything else. And it's so consistent. You could just roast through enemy squads so consistently as long as you can kind of keep them within the frontal arc of where the flamethrower is able to fire. And also the ability to slow enemy armor is just like, it's so strong. You can basically like frontline and just drive down an enemy team weapon with no concerns in the world, trusting that the crocodile flamethrower is going to make short work of it, and it does. So I'd say like I've been playing this battle group like crazy in 1v1s recently. And as far as the 1v1 battle groups go for UK forces, I actually think this is S tier. Like I think it's among the best by far. Managed to get through the most recent patch with like a couple of buffs, not really any major nerfs to it. I know the in combat healing has been nerfed a couple of times, attacking spirit. But even this, like, still very, very strong, affects a lot of the breakpoints of enemy weapons, which makes it difficult to bleed your army, and makes them much more effective in combat, especially in prolonged engagements against an opponent. Just everything in this battle group synergizes so fantastically together. Everything is valuable. There isn't really anything that's like not very good, except maybe I would say burnout, but burnout's not even bad. It's just that it competes with incendiary munitions. But virtually every choice in this battle group is a good one, and all of the units are also effective when used properly. So yeah, for that reason, I'm actually putting it in the S category. And that takes us to Indian artillery. So Indian artillery. In the most recent patch, a couple of changes. One of them was to Warcry. So the duration of Warcry was cut down pretty significantly. I believe it went from like 45 seconds, maybe it was a minute long, to only 15. But they also reduced the cost dramatically on it. And I believe they increased the cooldown on it. So still, like, this is a good ability. You do have a much smaller window to take advantage of the ability to push. It does synergize really well with Gurkhas, specifically with the Thompson Gurkhas. Between the ability to like force your opponent to retreat, and just like get in their backline and be really disruptive with the Gurkha Vet 1 ability as well. These two abilities have great synergy together. Valor passive, you guys are probably familiar with, but like 15% DR, 15% fire rate and accuracy. And then the bonuses are increasing as the squad takes hits. This is really valuable more than anything for like trying to keep your squads alive, preventing them from getting wiped. But you're not typically using this like deep in combat super well. You're not usually like taking advantage of this in close engagements that often, at least in a team game context. It's usually too risky to do that. But in 1v1, it could be pretty good. So yeah, Valor, overall, Warcry, both pretty good options. I tend to lean more towards Warcry just because of the novelty and the ability to make space and use it for aggressive moves at a relatively cheap cost. Moving on to the Gurkha section. So these guys got some buffs in the most recent update. The rifles that they carry, the Lee Enfields, were buffed at mid and long range. Thank you for that, Cardigan. Mid and long range Gurkhas were buffed for their Lee Enfield rifles. Now, this synergizes well with their Bren light machine gun section upgrade. And I'll say, like, these guys, I also think have suffered quite a bit from the power creep of other units. Other units have been buffed pretty significantly in their accuracy, their moving accuracy, their weapon upgrades have been improved. And Gurkhas haven't really got that same treatment. These guys used to handily be the strongest infantry unit in the game by far on release. I still remember. These guys would crush stormtroopers, Fallschirmjägers, Panzer Grenadiers, you name it. Like, they were killing everything. And now they just don't have the same sauce that they used to have. They're not as good as they were before, and I just really think it's because so many other units have been getting buffs and changes, and the Gurkhas have kind of been left in the dust a little bit. I know there was an effort to mitigate that with the change that they made to the rifles that the Gurkhas get, and also trying to give them, what is it called, the artillery, the on-map, the 25 pounder barrage that the Recce sections get. They also gave it to the Gurkhas. I know all of that has been an effort to make this unit more effective, but like, really, this battle group boils down to two main things: the BL5, the Gurkha, and the 4.2 inch heavy mortar. And I just feel like it's not really enough. The Gurkhas don't have enough draw to make them worth choosing this battle group for. Moving on, we got volunteer infantry. It's a decent passive. I would say, like, the feeling that I'm getting is that a lot of these manpower cheat passives have been kind of quietly power crept and sort of nerfed in a way because of the ability to build manpower caches now. I feel like that's not really talked about enough as like something that has a major impact on the economy of the game. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. I love the idea that, you know, we can actually cache our manpower points now. But just from my own perspective, like, this has kind of fallen out of favor with me, as has the Luftwaffe variant. I've been much more frequently going for Pillage because it's got great synergy with Warcry. You can kind of use Warcry and then get some kill some enemy infantry and get that munitions back using Pillage, and then kind of just rinse and repeat and do it again and again. Usually you're floating munitions like crazy in this battle group, and so you can kind of continuously spam like Warcry and off-map airbursts, etc. Now, on the artillery support side of the tree, you've got the Toad 4.2 inch heavy mortar. This is not right. I don't know what this is called, but this is not the correct name of the ability. I forget what it's called. I think it's just like something like extra barrage, or I can't remember what it's called. But it's basically, it allows you to fire more shells from all of your artillery units on and off map. So that's going to include your 4.2 inch heavy mortar. Yeah, I think it's called fire drills or something like that. Your 4.2 inch heavy mortar would be affected by this if it wasn't mutually exclusive, but your standard mortar is. Your bishops will be affected. Your BL5 will be affected, which is why both of these have great synergy together. Yeah. So pretty good selection options in the early game. Honestly, I don't really feel like great about the 4.2-inch heavy mortar. It is very easy to decrew with something like a mid-game artillery unit like a Nebelwerfer or Stuka or Wesp. All of those will kind of make short work of the heavy mortar. Now, it does come out early, and it does come with a truck, which is pretty nice value for what you're getting it for, because effectively you're getting the mortar for like 180 manpower. If you're somebody who would have built a truck anyways, this is actually not a bad choice. So, but it does have a limited window of usefulness, I would say, because, if your Axis opponents start rolling out some of the bigger guns and the heavier artillery, usually these guys are going to suffer and bleed quite a bit on the counter barrages. So you just have to be mindful of that. You've got off-map airburst barrage. This ability is pretty good at dispersing and disrupting enemy infantry/team weapon positions. Great when you're doing a big push with your allies and trying to focus down or disrupt a blob of infantry or anti-tank weapons, for example. Just team weapons in general, I would say. Not much else to it. It's pretty effective. It's it's munitions efficient, because especially if you're using pillage, because you're going to be able to soften up targets, and then your infantry squads will get some kills that will help feed munitions back into your economy. And then moving down to the last tree, we've got Perimeter Monitor. This ability is far too expensive for what it does. Now, on release, this ability was like wildly overpowered. It would basically fire shells at any unit that walked into friendly territory. Any enemy unit that walked into friendly territory, it would fire shells at. And the shells would arrive very quickly, and they were devastating. And they basically nerfed the ability into the ground. They made it like borderline useless. And the reason it's kind of useless now is because the shells have a longer delay. They only fire at, I think, one target at a time. Oh wait, no, it says 3. Each target can only be attacked by a single artillery battery. So 3. Up to 3 targets, but the shells also take a really long time to arrive. And so between the cost of this ability and just like its kind of weak effectiveness, it's almost never worth it. And so I don't find myself using this ability very often. The BL5, I kind of have mixed feelings about. I have a love-hate relationship with the BL5. When this thing hits, it's great. But I'll say, like, in general, it feels like the blast radius is not quite as effective as some of the other artillery pieces, which is really annoying because, to my understanding, this is meant to be like the most consistent, I guess, like in terms of rounds fired on target, this should usually be at like the top. And the reason is because it synergizes with the extra rounds coming from the artillery support bucket. But I had a game recently where I was playing coastals against one of these, and I just, like, as hard as it really wasn't that hard. Like, the bunkers that I had were never really dying. The casualties I was taking were pretty quickly reimbursed back to me. I never really feel like I was in any serious danger when I was being barraged by these, honestly. Despite, you know, having like 2 of them firing at a coastal position, which you would expect to be a lot more dangerous. So I feel like this needs something. I don't know what. I don't know what you could do to it to make it not OP, but more appealing. But yeah, I just feel like this doesn't quite slap the way that I would expect this artillery unit to, considering its cost. And frankly, like, it's kind of the highlight unit of the battle group. The Gurkhas, like, you know, they're okay. They're kind of like on the side. But like the BL5 to me is like supposed to be the most interesting unit in the battle group, and it's just not. It's just like not that good. So I'd really like to see this like get some changes because it's feeling kind of weak. Anyway, overall, I'd say like there's a lot of really mediocre stuff in this battle group. I feel like almost anything is a better choice than Indian artillery at the moment, which pains me because I love it so much. I love Gurkhas, I love Warcry, I love the BL5, but they're just not performing at the level that they should compared to some of the other battle groups. And so for that reason, this Indian artillery is going in the D category. Yeah. So interesting. You know, I didn't plan this, and I was actually planning originally to do 4 groups instead of 5, but this kind of makes sense to me. This looks pretty accurate in terms of did I put in D second time last time, Clammy? I don't remember that. I can't remember, but yeah, I guess, I don't know, just still feeling the pain of Indian artillery. Just all the other battle groups are just better, man. Like, they're just better. I don't know what to say. I want this to be so much better. I love using it, but it's so bad. It is so bad. Oh, brother. Yeah, no tempo, nothing really great, amazing coming from Indian artillery, unfortunately. And that takes us to, finally, the newest battle group for UK forces, which is the Polish Cavalry battle group. And I have been having a blast with this. You guys, I mean, if you pay attention, you know, like, this was the first battle group that I made a video about, because for me, it was the easiest to digest, and the power in it was very, very, very present. It was very, like, very noticeable. All of the units, all the abilities are just really, really strong. Obviously I have a battle group video that breaks everything down in a lot more detail, but I'm kind of just going to breeze through and talk about the important points that make this so good. So starting out, I think, like, Vengeance and Strategic Targets, both great options. Vengeance obviously giving you the attack speed buff on whatever unit you choose to use this on. And giving increased duration. I think it is a little bit expensive for what it does, because it's only for 1 unit. Compared to Strategic Targets, has so many uses across 1v1s, team games, using it in tandem with other abilities, using it in big engagements or as a deterrent tool. It's just got so many potential uses, and it's got such great economy, because you're getting munitions back every time your targets lose a percentage of their HP, of their maximum health. And so most of the time, if you're using this correctly, you're not actually spending any munitions. If anything, you're gaining munitions back, and you're making those targets easier to hit for you and your teammates, which is just amazing. So I think great value from this ability. Vengeance also good, like, good to throw it down on a 17 pounder or on, like, maybe a Firefly that's, like, in a dueling situation. This can be a very clutch ability, but I would say in general, I tend to prefer Strategic Targets personally. Okay, so I'd say, like, moving on to Lancers. These guys are like mini stormtroopers that also blap light vehicles like crazy. I mean, these guys will tear down, and you can see it in my battle group video. They'll tear down something like a 2-2-1 in 2 volleys. It's crazy. They're, like, super, super strong. As long as you can avoid bleeding on these guys, which isn't that hard to do because they are really beefy. They have 120 HP per model. As long as you can avoid bleeding, these guys are really economical and really, really strong. Really nice augment to your infantry force. And they're equally effective against light vehicles and infantry. Now, they won't win in the late game against, like, stormtroopers or, like, vetted PGs or vetted Guastas, but they do amazing damage at long range. And so if you can keep your targets from closing on you, like some of those shock infantry units from closing on you, the Poles are going to make short work of them. And so for that reason, these guys are very, 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 very good. Both these abilities at the end of the tree, No Man Left Behind, very good. A little bit of a micro tax, but still very good for your manpower economy. So if you're struggling with manpower, this is generally a better choice. If you're floating a ton of munitions, a recon mission might be a little bit better, because you can also try to isolate and pick off some, like, backline targets where your opponent's not paying attention. Great synergy with Decapitation Strike, between Recon Mission and Decap Strike, because like I said, you can look for those backline targets where your opponent's not paying attention and try to pick them off with this. Now on the right-hand tree, we've got our Tulip rocket launcher. This is so much fun. These guys, effective on infantry and vehicles alike. Really effective on the Humber, on the Stuart. It can really take an engagement that would otherwise be like challenging and a bit scary and turn it in your favor. I had a recent game against Dumais. I think it was on Bologna or Bologna, whatever the hell that map is called. And I was using a Stuart with the Tulip rocket launchers against a Stug, and the Tulip rocket with Panzerbane rockets allowed me to consistently punch through the Stug's frontal armor with my 6-pounder and occasionally with the Stuart. And so I was getting great value from the Tulip rocket launcher on the Stuart. Really big fan of this. Panzerbane rockets and land mattress. Panzerbane rockets, I feel like in general is probably a little bit better of a choice, more competitive. I've been trying desperately to get great value out of the land mattress, but it hasn't been great. The value that I've been getting has not been great from the land mattress. It's good at saturating an area in rockets, but it just doesn't compete with some of the other late game artillery options like the Stuka. Doesn't really damage mediums in the same way that like the Bishop does, for example. So I like this unit, but I think, in terms of its power, it leaves me wanting a little bit. This is probably, for me, the lowest point of this battle group. I feel like most times when, I would like a land mattress, I don't know, pretty good at dealing with infantry, but like Bishop is more consistent. That Whiz-Bang just kind of reigns supreme right now as far as our rocket artillery options go. Stuka's still very good. The scatter on it is also quite egregious unless you have vision on the area. But yeah, overall, both options, not bad. I think the more congested the map is, the better, obviously, for using the land mattress. But if you're planning on using decap strike, and most of the time I like using Panzerbane rockets because of the extra augment, damage / armor shred, all the good stuff that comes from Panzerbane rockets with decap strike. And which takes us to the bottom of the tree. So you've got the Firefly and decapitation strike. Firefly, I do feel like the unit suffers a little bit on the mobility side, as well as attack speed. It is slower rate of fire than the Archer, and also slower mobility, like just, less maneuverable, a little bit slower acceleration, top speed, etc. Good for, I guess, if you can get like a couple of these and just do huge alpha strike damage on enemy tanks, it's good. But like these things get caught pretty easily by snares, by infantry snares, by 88s. And if they get dove, they are also very susceptible because they have such a low rate of fire. So I feel like overall, Firefly, interesting unit. I like it. But on the power, in terms of power scale, not the best, like not amazing. Just like okay, I would say. On the other hand, decapitation strike, dude. Oh my gosh, this is my favorite aircraft ability by far. I love the charge system. I love that you can target 3 of these in different places over, a period of time. And get really, really precise time on target airstrikes. Like you can pick off multiple soft targets with this. You can set up and just annihilate a heavy, like a King Tiger or an Elephant with this. This is probably my favorite ability in this battle group, and I think it's amazing. Really, really, really strong. Even just one of these charges from the barrage from the rocket hawkers will take Panzer IV to like 100 HP, like super, super low. So overall, very, very, very strong ability, and I think it's amazing. Goes really well with the rest of the battle group. Excellent flavor. You know, if you want to hear me yap more about it, go watch the battle group video. But for that reason, I'm putting this one also up in the S tier. There's just some really strong units, and Decap Strike is really what pushes this from the A tier into the S tier easily for me personally. I think hands down, bar none, as far as UK battle groups go, both of these are in the S tier. No doubt about it. These are like my most consistent choices across 1v1s, 2v2s, even in team games. I'd say these are probably your best options in general. And honestly, no huge surprise considering if you look at like all of the battle groups that we've got most recently, it's not a crazy surprise that the S tier ones are the two most recently released battle groups. So there you have it. All right, let's get back into it. So talking now about US forces. So we completed UK. We ended up with, so I think we'll start with small game setting. And I might shuffle these around a little bit at the end when we're talking about big team games. But moving on to US forces, we'll start with Airborne. So just give me a second here. Forces, Airborne. Okay. So not a lot of major changes for Airborne over the last little while. Like most of the starting units, the heavy machine gun drop as well as the Luftwaffe PIO drop was done pretty recently as well, nerfing your ability to drop them at the beginning of the match. And I think now you have to wait like a full minute before you can drop them in, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's 45 seconds. I can't remember. But yeah, Pathfinders, I would say not super popular from what I'm seeing at the moment. Heavy machine gun drop is generally the go-to. And the magic of paradropped infantry tree in general is like your ability to bypass tech, because it has effectively what you need to manage the mid game between your paratrooper squads and your anti-tank guns. You kind of have everything you need to make your way to a fast tier 4. I will say, like, I feel like some of the power of this battle group has fallen off specifically because of the nerf to the anti-infantry capabilities of the 76mm Shermans. And I'm not saying that like it's not good anymore, but it's not like distinctly good at the tier 4 rush, because tier 4 isn't quite as good as it was on previous patches, and you're giving up a little bit of that mid-game power that you would see from like motor pool play or something like that, which is just not very popular with this battle group. On the aerial support side, you do have some great abilities now. They increase the speed at which smoke bombing run will arrive, which is awesome. Recon loiter is always great. We love a good reconnaissance scan. I would say, like, obviously the new Polish loiter is going to be a little bit better because it provides one pass and then a nice, you know, circular rotation following a key enemy unit, which is great. And then you've also got your supply drop and your paradrop reinforcements. Being able to feed munitions and healing crates to your teammates on the front lines is very nice, also to yourself as needed. Paradrop reinforcements I don't see a lot of, largely because I think the players that I'm typically playing against are using a lot of anti-aircraft, and I have to imagine team games are kind of the same thing. It'd be very difficult to get good value out of this because it's just going to get shot down by AA. And both of these abilities remain very strong. The Rocket Strike remains very strong. I would say, like, Decapitation Strike definitely outshines this ability because of your ability to target it in several places as opposed to just one. But, you know, if you get a good P-47 Rocket Strike on the rear of an enemy tank, that thing's going down. That's guaranteed it's dead, right? And also, Carpet Bombing Run remains one of the most widespread and devastating area of effect abilities. And so for that reason, I'd say Airborne Battlegroup. Overall, you know, paratroopers also kind of got power crept by rifles. Riflemen are much stronger in this most recent patch compared to previous patches, but paratroopers remain effective at long range. Great in bazooka blobs. I've seen them as well be quite effective because they're so beefy, which can make it difficult to push them off the map. Being able to reinforce them on the front line is very nice as well. And they just get crazy damage reduction with some of their veterancy between the the built-in damage reduction that they get, and then the extra damage reduction that they can get from their Vet 1 ability and being inside or near a territory point. It just makes them easily like one of the beefiest infantry units in the game. And I think that's why we're seeing people start using them with bazookas over the standard bazooka squad, which is a little bit more fragile. So yeah, overall, like pretty effective unit. I'd say like good synergy with, I mean, it really kind of helps you leapfrog your mid game into a fast late game and fast tier 4. And so for that reason, I think I'm going to put Airborne probably in like B tier, kind of leaning to A, but I'd say it's not quite there because of some of the power creep on some of the other things. And then 76 millimeters not being quite as good as they were last patch. Like, I think the real issues that Airborne has is lack of indirect. You don't really have any indirect, and that could be a big problem, especially if your opponent has a lot, because you want to play really static with this battle group because of paratroopers not being super great on the move. And obviously you're probably going to lean a little bit more into team weapons like your Paradrop MG and Paradrop AT gun in the mid game. And if your opponent is playing artillery heavy, this is going to be a bit of a problem. So I think I'm going to keep it in the B tier for that reason. And again, this might be a little bit higher when I think about, or sorry, lower when I think about team games. Like it's probably B tier for team games, but I don't know, maybe it's A tier for like 1v1 and 2v2. I'm kind of on the fence about this one, but I think I'm going to stick with B. That takes us to Armored. Armored Battlegroup, the infamous Armored. So major changes to Armored Battlegroup in the most recent patch, and I could not be more happy about them. So a couple things. Number one, Assault Engineers is available at 0 CP, and it is, it's 0 CP, and it's no longer competing with Fast Deploy and or Strength and Steel, which is great because a lot of people were not using Assault Engineers because it was competing with one of those other things, and now it doesn't. Now you can have either or. So great options now available to you. Now it is going to kind of give away, like, you know, if you're going Assault Engineers in the early game, your opponent's going to know that you're, that's right. Sorry. Yes, it did used to compete with veteran crews. That's what it was. And people could not decide. They were like, man, Assault Engineers are great, but veteran crews are better. And that is true. And now that's why they've built veteran crews into the default option as your mid game selection. So it's going to be available to you no matter what path you choose, and you can have Assault Engineers at the same time. They did rework field repairs, which allows you to, and it's really cheap actually. Is this right? This can't be right. Surely, maybe someone in chat can verify this for me. But yeah, it restores a lot of health on your target vehicle. And the nice thing is that not only is it going to repair the target vehicle when it's not in combat. So basically, like, once you pull your vehicle out of combat, even while it's on the move, you can repair. You can also do this to allied vehicles. So you don't just have to do it to your own, which is really nice. Helps you kind of like increase the uptime of your teammates' vehicles. And it's a great way to just like get really, really good value out of, like, you know, doing a little bit of push, taking a little bit of damage, throwing on a field repairs, and then just getting back out on the field. It's very, very good for that. Is competing with Assault Engineers, which I think in general, there's a lot more like combat power and utility that comes from Assault Engineers. Having the extra repair speed is really nice, and the extra beefiness of the extra man that you get in the Assault Engineer squad is really nice as well. But field repairs, I think a great option in team games. Veteran crews, you no longer have to choose this over anything else. It's going to be part of your options for regardless of which tree you decide to go down. It's going to be one of your selections at some point. And then they put the Scott and the M31 recovery vehicle at the end of the tree. And I like this distinct choice between either the Scott or the recovery vehicle. Feels much more suitable to have the Scott competing with the recovery vehicle over Seek and Destroy, which is where it was before. And so kind of happy to see this division. And now you can kind of decide, like, I've seen great people make great use out of the Scott in my recent games. White phosphorus rounds dealing a ton of damage, consistently firing smoke, just so much disruption available in this unit is really, really, really good. So Scott is in a great place. Recovery vehicle, obviously your ability to salvage or to recover friendly vehicles, enemy vehicles, all very, very strong coming from this option. And so this is also a great choice. Fast deploy, I think it's lost a little bit of its luster, but strength and steel is fantastic. Both of these very, very good in 1v1, 2v2 setting. I would imagine, you know, maybe not noticeably impactful or as impactful in team games because there's just like so many more units on the field, so many other enemies that you have to concern yourself with. But overall, like, still, you know, good opening options. Seek and destroy is now part of the tree. The accuracy is really nice, especially when you're doing a pursuit. I think this is especially true when you're trying to pursue enemy vehicles with like Hellcats or Easy 8s. Speaking of Easy 8s, moving down to the bottom tree, they finally, somebody at Relic was listening. I've been complaining about this for years. They separated War Machine from the Easy 8 production, and there is no longer any call-in Easy 8, which I'm a huge fan of, and I love this. I think this is great. So War Machine reduces manpower costs of all vehicles from production buildings, and the Easy 8 is now made producible from the tank depot. Now they did reduce the cost of the Easy 8 because they, you know, recognizing that they're not going to be able to use it. We're not going to be able to use it in tandem with War Machine anymore. I still think the Easy 8 is amazing, even for its costs. I believe it's 375 manpower and 105 fuel, which is quite good for its value. And the Easy 8 remains, bar none, best medium tank in the game by far. Best against infantry, great machine guns, very consistent in penetrating enemy axis vehicles, access to HVAP, access to white phosphorus, just loaded with really, really good stuff. And obviously, you know, comparing that with veteran crews as well as seek and destroy, you can make some amazing armor pushes with the Easy 8s. So armored in a really good spot. And as far as the 1v1 and the 2v2 settings go, this is my personal opinion. I think maybe some people will feel different about this, but I'm going to push it all the way up into the A tier. I'd say bordering on S tier. In a 1v1 setting, I would actually say it's probably S tier because, you know, the assault engineers, all the other things I talked about. The weakness of this battle group is, you know, I was going to say it's indirect, but like, honestly, you can kind of cover that with the Scott. So it's not as bad as it was, but I don't know. I'm kind of waffling. No Munisync? Nah, that's not true. You can use white phosphorus rounds on the Scott. You can plant shitloads of mines. You can use what the hell is it called? Seek and destroy on cooldown. Yeah. Oh, you're having trouble with the Easy 8, eh, Bubba? I don't know. Easy 8 feels slow. I don't get that feeling. I feel like it's pretty quick, but I mean, War Machine is also very good for that reason, right? Like, you could just go War Machine Hellcats and just like totally outbuild your opponent as long as you got the manpower for it. And between Strength and Steel and War Machine, you should have great manpower economy with this battle group. So I think I'm going to put it in A. Honestly, I think I'm going to put it in A. It feels pretty good there. Not quite in the S tier, really teetering on the precipice of S tier, but I actually have another one in mind for S tier. We'll get to that shortly. Moving on to Advanced Infantry. Rangers remain supreme. No nerfs to Rangers. I know a lot of people have been complaining about these guys for a long time. This whole like Ranger death blob just loaded up with weapons and Ranger weapon training just being absolutely devastating. I get it. I do feel like these guys are easier to manage as you go up in ELO. There are some maps that make them very difficult to deal with. But in general, on like open maps and stuff, they're like not that hard to deal with. You can usually bleed your opponent out. You can suppress them at max range, hammer them with artillery, all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, some other changes that came into the battle group we'll talk about in a little bit. So frontline medical station, this is always super useful. This is one of my favorite battle groups for USF in team games because of this. Being able to build this on the front line is really nice, and it saves you a little bit of what you would spend on a cash and then, like, I don't know, a medical half track, I guess. Designated assault position. This ability is great for setting up flanks or chasing down enemy units. Both of these very good if you're playing infantry heavy. And then ranger weapon training remains strong as ever. And then infantry assault got a nerf in terms of its cost. But frankly, this ability is stronger than it's ever been, because riflemen got significant buffs to their long range damage. And these guys are virtually always fighting at long range because they're basically just a squad of a force of infantry that is attack moving into your opponent. And that has made infantry assault like much more scary for your opponent to deal with. And if you can't pin them down and, you know, mince them up like really quickly, then it can give you a ton of tempo advantage and give you a ton of pressure. It's still really good, really strong ability overall, and I think this is one of the stronger battle groups just because of this ability. Looking at the other side, you got artillery observers. These guys are really strong with their beacons. I don't tend to see builds with these guys that are building, like, I don't know, more than 2 of them. It used to be pretty popular to build like 3 or 4 of these and try to fast tech. Or spam these guys with team weapons. That strategy has kind of fallen off, or at least fallen out of popularity. Not to say that, you know, it's not still strong and it can't still be done. It's not something I'm seeing very consistently anymore. Then we've got our ammunition storage ability. This is just like amazing with any artillery friendly or your own using the M2A1 howitzer. Ammunition storage remains supreme, probably the best artillery and like support structure augment in the game, and so adds a lot of value to this battle group just for that. The howitzer itself, I think this is the best in my opinion, this is the best howitzer in the game, and it mostly comes down to your veterancy abilities. Not that anything in the howitzer itself is incredible. It's mostly just the synergy with the ammunition storage and then the Vet 1 abilities that you have access to. So artillery support, which is amazing synergy with your own infantry, with friendly, and this isn't just US infantry. This also applies to friendly infantry that are nearby and can fire and is around as it's firing the barrage. So you can see here 40% speed, 50% reduced suppression, 20% harder to hit. Just like amazing for making infantry pushes. And that's why, like, putting your medical tent near one of your howitzers is a little bit risky, but also a good idea for options like this. Typically when I'm building howitzers, if I'm building 1, I'm usually just going for artillery support. Now, if I get more and I get 2, then I'll probably get charged shells on the second one. But I'm typically going for artillery support first because it gives those incredible buffs to your infantry. So yeah, it's my favorite howitzer emplacement. I don't think it's amazing. Like I said, like, you know, it's not like it does crazy damage or anything like that. The howitzers themselves are in kind of a weird spot because the game just favors a lot more mobile units, and the howitzers are pretty major investment. So, you know, it's pretty rare to get like great value out of these. But with the Vet 1 options, they are decently strong. Going back down to field ordnance. You've got free fire drills. I feel like most of the time it's a little bit risky to go. I mean, you usually have to put your howitzer pretty close to the front line to be able to utilize free fire drills. But there are some maps if you can protect your howitzer with buildings, or, you know, you've got a really strong defensive front line. Maybe you've got a teammate that's playing like UK forces that's team weapon oriented, and they're playing Australian Battlegroup and they got to hold the line or something like that. That can be good for getting extra value out of your howitzer, but I feel like most of the time the rapid artillery barrage is better, just to nuke a single target, maybe pick off a crude flak 36 or something like that, maybe a heavy bunker position. This ability is very, very good at just knocking down a target in the back line. Even like neutralizing an enemy artillery position, like maybe like an obice emplacement or something like that. This can make short work of that. So generally I go for this choice instead. Well, where does this go? I'm kind of leaning towards, at my level, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I have to imagine like at like 1,000 elo, this is probably devastating to deal with. But most of the time, when I play against these guys in team games or in 1v1s or 2v2s, if I'm prepared for this, it's not that strong. But I don't know, I think I'm kind of waffling a little bit. The Rangers themselves are not amazing. The infantry assault really pushes this up into like these tiers, I think. The howitzer, again, you know, nothing crazy, nothing like if I'm evaluating like the strength of Rangers and howitzers at my level, I probably put it in C. But like infantry assault with, you know, artillery observers and like the ammo storage, I'm kind of inclined to put it in like A. What else there is? It's a B. In the right hands, Rangers are really good in team games. Yeah. You know what, dude? This is a competitive battle group for US. I think it's got to stay in A. Like, there's a reason I've kept it in my loadout for so long. And it's like it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I think, and I think I have to put, you know what? I think I have to put it in B because there is some good stuff in it. Rangers, yeah, can be good in the right hands, but it is kind of one-dimensional around infantry. Like, it doesn't really add much in any other category. There isn't like a lot of great abilities. Like, what's it called? Point assault is okay, not amazing. What is this called? Designated assault position, DAP. This is okay. This is really strong. I have to imagine in team games this isn't quite as strong as it is in 1v1s, obviously, because it doesn't scale. So like when you're using this in team games and you're running into like two opponents that are playing defensively, like this is not going to do nearly as much, right? So yeah, I don't know. I think I got to keep it in B for that reason. No, I'm gonna make it A. I was waffling. I'm like, is it as good as Airborne? It's definitely better than Airborne. So I think I'm gonna leave it. I think I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. All right, moving on. We're talking about, is it the latest one? Oh yeah, Partisan Battlegroup. Oh my god, dude, this was the most, my expectations were utterly subverted for this battle group. When I saw this battle group announced, I was like, nah, it doesn't really seem that interesting. Doesn't seem that cool. Seems kind of boring. But then, dude, I played with them, and then I played with them some more, and I was like, oh my gosh, this battle group is absolutely bananas. This battle group is insanely strong in the right hands. Micro-taxing, absolutely. But like, I thought, like, I was imagining like COH3 partisans, like rinky dink, like, okay, infiltration, spawn, PPSH, throw a little Molotov, whoop-de-doo, right? But like, no, these guys are These guys are just terror. Like, they're just like brutal. The ability for them to just like pop up in buildings near the front line, depending on the map, obviously. The map, these guys are map dependent, but like the more buildings there are, the more of a horror show it is trying to fight these guys. And the fact that they can just like appear in a building, ambush you, and then disappear in the next second, it just like, I'm in like a horror movie. Like, I'm playing whack-a-mole with these guys. And I'm talking about playing against them right now, but playing with them is just like, it's so much fun. Like, it's so, you can be so annoying to your opponent and just like poking in their backline, disrupting team weapons, finishing off vehicles with AT rifles or with the saboteur infiltration. Like, all this stuff is just so good. And they have great frontline presence through OSS coordination and tunnels. Smuggling routes is okay. Underground detonation, a great late game ability. They've got a recon ability. They've got a what is this? Like a debuff ability. Medical caches, and you know, that's good, but underground detonation way more fun. Partisans, lots of versatility between their different weapon types. I'm personally partial to the AT rifles, but I've seen people make great use of the submachine guns, of the grenade launcher, using the submachine guns to ambush team weapons and steal them, using the grenade launcher to poke at opponents that are in buildings or in cover. All, like, it's just full of good stuff, and lots of people have been doing videos about this battle group, including myself. You can go and check that out for more details. But just like, yeah, just incredible stuff. Forward headquarters passives are fantastic as well. Applies some passive bonuses to your teammates that are in buildings. The ability to heal using heal all friendly infantry in the radius of your tunnel influence using medical caches is also very good. This like secret spy network recon ability that is really the only stealth recon ability in the game, where you're using it and your opponent has no idea where or how you have vision of something. This is like really nice. And yeah, just some like really incredible innovative mechanics in here. Super annoying to fight, super frustrating, but lots of fun, I think, for people to play with. And I was just like utterly surprised. I was utterly surprised at how good this battle group turned out to be. Not just in terms of like fun, but power. Like, in the right hands, this battle group is terrifying. And so for that reason, we're gonna put this boy way up in the S tier. And there is some things that are contributing to this right now. Like, I think, for example, with US, you can rush fast bars and support your infantry from a light vehicle potential attack by going a partisan on the front line with AT rifles, which really popular strategy at high level right now in 1v1 and 2v2s. Yeah, great value from underground detonation. Like I said, very map dependent. Like, don't get me wrong, you could be playing like El Alamein or something. No, well, El Alamein is actually not a great example. That's actually pretty good. I'm trying to think. You could be playing like Steps. Okay, Steps. It's probably like a B tier battle group. But dude, you're playing like Lorraine. You're playing like Torrente. You're playing like so what's that new 4v4 map? Powder Keg. Oh my gosh, dude, these guys are nuts. So I think we're putting it in the S tier. But yeah, I'd say map dependent. Like this is definitely map dependent. But like, if it's on a good map, this is S tier bar none, no doubt. Semois, yeah, I have someone in chat saying Semois. Agreed. Semois, absolutely brutal on Semois. Super good. Being able to, man, that map is so big. Like, being able to port around the map and just like get behind your opponent, like doing stuff like that is just like, it's so good. So yeah, really strong battle group. Definitely up in the S tier for US forces. And that takes us to Spec Ops. And man, Spec Ops, this baby has come a long way let me tell you. So I mean, not a crazy amount has changed within Spec Ops itself, but they've tuned some things, and then some other changes have kind of had, some other meta changes have kind of had an impact on this battle group. And I'll kind of talk about the core ones from my perspective. So when it comes to US roster changes in this most recent patch, the major standout things were motor pool changes. Chaffee was made more effective. Greyhound was made more effective, given more utility on both sides. Riflemen were made much more effective, especially with the bar upgrade. And so this battle group has become incredibly popular. And I think the main reason for that is you can play very heavy into your early and your mid game and dump a lot of your fuel into your infantry upgrades, into your motor pool units. And you're not going to slow down your progress to your tier 4 option, which is, in this case, the whiz bang. And the whiz bang perfectly fits into a early to mid heavy built roster for the US. So if I'm playing like heavy on motor pool and maybe mechanized support center upgrades, and I'm getting bars and grenades on my riflemen and upgrading them, and then, you know, my opponent gets out a medium tank. As long as I've got like a couple AT guns and snares and mines, I'm good. You know, I'm okay with that. And the whiz bang in turn can just absolutely decimate in a single volley some of the core units that would cause you major problems. Namely, the team weapons of your Axis opponent. Their packs, their MGs, MG42, MG34, whatever, concentrations of infantry, what have you. The whiz bang is bar none the fastest time on target rocket artillery in the game. And when combined with all of those early to mid game investments that I was just talking about, it from like motor pool and in your riflemen, it's just the perfect catapult and continued power spike to your mid game to allow you to catapult into the late game. And the beautiful thing about the whiz bang is that after you fire the rocket barrage and you hit that vet 1, you can pop off the top and use it as a standard M4 Sherman without having had to go for tier 4. So that is, I think, a big part of what makes this battle group so powerful at the moment. Now, going through the rest of the tree, I think the pack howitzer is trash. I virtually never use this. I kind of talked about the pack howitzer for UK. I feel kind of the same way. The Weasel is pretty good. I tend to favor the Jeep because it's a little bit cheaper, and you get a better penetrating machine gun on the Jeep. The Weasel, so in the most recent patch, the Jeep MG penetration was increased, but the Weasel was not. So the Weasel is not quite as effective against early ultralight vehicles as the Jeep is. And the Jeep is also faster. So the Weasel still has more HP. You still have some interesting Vet 1 options, but in general, I personally just favor the Jeep. Your P47 anti-infantry loiter in small games and like 1v1s and 2v2s, very, very effective. Mark vehicle, also a very good ability. I think the Captain Mark still kind of very good, very similar to this ability. But both options very good. I tend to prefer the P47 loiter. We already talked about the whiz bang in detail. Moving over to the other side, raiding flares, amazing reconnaissance ability for the US, and also the accuracy bonus for units underneath the flares is great. Awesome for trying to pick up wipes or doing a big push against your opponent, infantry push. Smokescreen I tend to favor in small games, so 1v1s and 2v2s, just a great opportunity to shut down maybe a machine gun that's got like caught my infantry out of position, or disrupt a enemy team weapon blob in the back line, maybe dropping it on top of a couple of AT guns as I'm doing a big push with some armor or something like that. Now, you've also got SSFs. These guys, great jack of all trade unit, got bazookas, got Johnson LMGs, and they also have the ability to plant those special secret demos that I was talking about with the commandos. Now, they do get that option at Vet 1, but still, like, very, very strong, very good ability. Demos incredible at being able to pick up wipes on enemy infantry or potentially ambush enemy vehicles as well. And then at the end of the tree, you've got assault operation, which is pretty good. They made some changes to this. They actually added some damage resistance to it instead of received accuracy bonuses, which is pretty good. But honestly, I tend to favor using my munition sink on the P-47 anti-infantry loiter. And if I have a lot of munitions that I'm floating, I'm never upset to drop myself a nice air resupply operation where I have the option of picking up one of the anti-tank guns, maybe a 1919 if I need it, and or a fuel crate. Of course, we're always going to go for the fuel crate, but optionally, you know, having to pick up these weapons, team weapons as well to augment my force. All of these are just incredible options and really lend themselves well to an early game focused and invest play from the US player. And so for that reason, I'm actually putting Spec Ops up in the S tier. This is bar none, probably the most popular and maybe arguably the most powerful, generally speaking, US battle group in 1v1s and 2v2s right now. So really happy to see this because I know, you know, not too long ago, I think when I did this battle group video a long time ago, I can't remember what tier it was at. Maybe it was B, somewhere in the middle, I think it was. But yeah, it's come such a long way and it's so good now. It's such a great spot. So really, really happy with the current state of the Spec Ops battle group. And last but not least, that takes us to heavy weapons. Heavy weapons. All right, heavy weapons in an interesting position at the moment. I find myself kind of... So I like this battle group a lot. The power struggle that I'm having, or I guess the issue that I'm having with it when it pertains to power is limited usefulness as it relates to the half tracks, because more recently, motor pool play has become much more popular. And that's not to say that the Weapon Support Center play is not good. It definitely is. If you're playing primarily Weapon Support Center and you like to go early machine guns, bazooka squads, this battle group is great. It's very, very solid. Personally, I have been favoring a lot more rifleman and motor pool builds at the moment, and this battle group doesn't synergize quite as well with that. I'll say that there are some components of it that are very solid. I would say the 50 cal I don't tend to use because, like I said, I'm playing Rifleman and Weapon Support Center, so I'm not usually getting a 50 cal unless I'm dropping one from my Jeep, in which case I'm like spending 150 munitions for a 50 cal, which is a lot. So I try not to do that too much. But some things that lend themselves well to that playstyle, rapid reposition is great for my mortar teams, for my AT guns, as is bolstered team weapons. If I'm playing like double AT gun, the bolstered team weapon's really nice because the extra rate of fire and the extra beefiness on the squad to keep them from dying. And this is even better now that all of the AT gun squads were increased by a single squad member. So now these guys go up to six squad members, which is really, really good. Makes it very, very difficult to decrew them for the Axis and using their, artillery or whatever else. 6 guys is, no small task to try to tear down in terms of the squad size. So in that regard, some of these things are pretty useful with the battle group. Now, Black Dragon artillery barrage, this is a fantastic ability. I was talking about, if you're playing Weapon Support Center, these half tracks, exchangeable parts, assault carriers, this is probably all very good. The M3 anti-tank gun, this is pretty good. It's kind of like mini 17 pounder. I find myself losing most of the games that I go for this. Could just be a skill issue on my part. But I find like, you know, it just kind of forces me to play a little bit too defensively, and I just don't play US very well that way. That's just my, you know, maybe that's my own problem. And then looking at the Pershing, I feel like the Pershing still kind of comes out pretty late. It's very expensive. I think it's like 728 manpower or something like that. Some really weird number on the manpower side, and 200 fuel. Coming out behind tier 4. Now, this thing still slaps, don't get me wrong, but it did get some significant nerfs to its acceleration, to its top speed, so it's not as maneuverable and dominant as it once was. And obviously the fact that you can only get one of them kind of limits your ability to deal with blobs of enemy tanks, like P3s with tungsten rounds, for example, or Panthers or something like that. But still like a very solid unit. And I'd say a lot of times when I'm playing heavy weapons, this is kind of my win condition unit, where it's like, if I can get this thing out, then I'm usually going to win. But if I can't, then I'm like playing from behind and I don't have that much else to kind of, you know, help me get there. And I do find myself as well, the rapid reposition and the bolster team weapons, obviously you're eating a lot of CPs by going into this tree, and it's just taking you further and further away from the Pershing. And so honestly, more recently, because of my own playstyle, I've just been favoring going down this tree and grabbing rapid reposition and one of these two options. And then, you know, if it's a super long game, then I'll make my way to the Pershing. But in general, otherwise, I'm like, you know, kind of ignoring the right side of the tree. But like I said, if you're playing Weapons Support Center, still very good options in here. Assault carriers, being able to use this in the early game to make aggressive pushes and basically ignore small arms damage against your half tracks because of the inherent damage resistance that they get, is a really nice way to like make space, and then you can kind of get really aggressive with whatever units you happen to have. The only thing is, like, what units are you usually carrying in this? You know, maybe sometimes like bazooka squads. You know, you could do like a little bazooka squad battle bus. That could be pretty good at times. But for the most part, I don't find myself going too deep with these assault carriers. I usually find myself upgrading to one of the other half-track variants pretty quickly. Okay, so that is the end of the US battle groups. Geez. So for heavy weapons, some solid options. Again, this is just my personal take. I have to say, like, I kind of want to put this one in B because, again, I feel like kind of limited usefulness. Could just be the way that I'm playing US that's causing me to think this way. But I think with Weapon Support Center builds, if you're somebody that's really good at that, you can probably push this into like an A tier battle group. But just for me personally, I think I'm going to leave it in B. And I think that, you know, it's got some great augments to it, but it really, really wants you to play into that Weapon Support Center type build. And that's just not my preferred play style in general. And so my feeling around it, my gut feeling is telling me it's probably a B battle group. So there you have it. That's US forces. Nothing really falling too low on the US forces side. I think you could probably argue that like Airborne is probably like a C, somewhere between B and C. But for the most part, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with this kind of distribution in this battle group. Heavy weapons better in 4v4, where you probably want to switch between AA half tracks and med tracks. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. But again, I guess like 4v4, you know, you're going to be playing motor pool probably a little bit less often, because most players, they're going to try to catapult into a tier 4. So yeah, that's a good observation. But I'd say like small games, 1v1s, 2v2s, it's probably B tier for that category. All right, so moving on to our Wehrmacht battle groups. So we've got Breakthrough, Coastal, Last Stand, which is the latest edition, Luftwaffe, Mechanized, and Terror battle groups. So starting out with Breakthrough. Scooch over to our Wehrmacht section. And getting into Wehrmacht. So Assault Grenadier, starting on the left side, Assault Forces. Assault Grenadiers kind of got an inherent buff a little bit because Grenadiers were buffed with their long-range damage. I'll say, like, with the Rifleman changes, these guys do not feel good to use against Riflemen. I'm going to be honest. But not a terrible upgrade. I also feel like since Relic is really incentivizing players with the transfer order changes, they're really incentivizing players to transfer order their Grenadiers into mid-tier or late-tier infantry units like Jaegers and PGs. You kind of have diminishing returns on like an Assault Grenadier investment. However, it might make sense to keep one or two around. And the ability to sprint into a snare is really, really nice. That's probably like the best part of the Assault Grenadiers in the mid and late game, as the MP40s and obviously the durability of the Grenadiers starts to fall off. So overall, Assault Grenadiers, okay. Breakthrough, still incredibly strong ability in 1v1s. Really, really great for turning an initiative or a win on a fight into a lot of captured territory between the extra capture and decapture rate. The smoke bombing run, because the smoke is delivered more quickly, this is actually a much more useful choice than it was last patch. So this is like pretty solid overall. Not a bad choice. It usually was like a must-choose breakthrough, but this is actually half decent now because the smoke is delivered a little bit more quickly, so you're going to get more value out of this. Mechanized Assault Group, they increased the cost of this, not to mention the CPs for it is pretty high. I believe it's like at least 3 CPs to get down here. It might be 4 actually. Is it? No, it's just 3. Yeah, it's just 3. So 3 CPs, but it is quite expensive to get out the 251 and the Stormtrooper combo. Totally understand why Relic did this. We don't want to incentivize call-ins too much. But personally, I just haven't been using either of these very often. Usually because, again, it kind of delays the Tiger tank, which is really the highlight of this battle group on the other side of the tree. Incendiary bombing run, I don't really think this is very good. I feel like the line on this needs to be wider in order for it to be really useful. So as far as entry abilities goes, I'm not really a huge fan of either of these. What is it? Oh, I see. You can pick 2 units. Got it. It's a nice feature. On the other side, armored offensives, you got the 2.5 ton cargo truck, which was buffed recently and adjusted so that it was able to gather resources from different kinds of territory points as well as victory points, which is very interesting. Nice dynamic that was added to this, but honestly, I still think it's a little bit too niche to be made super useful or interesting. Rapid production kind of remains the same. 50% construction speed on vehicles is kind of nice, but still not the most exciting. Blitzkrieg, this remains to be one of the best armored abilities in the game, but I rarely see it. And that could be, I don't know, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I think Wehrmacht has a lot of like different munition sinks, and so maybe that's why we don't see this ability so often. It could also be because a lot of the other abilities, the other components of this battle group are kind of lackluster. But I think like, yeah, it's really strong. This is a really, really strong ability. Making your own tanks harder to hit and your opponents more likely to miss them, while increasing rate of fire on tanks. A lot of the time, like if you're using this with P4s, they already get a rate of fire bonus with their Vet 1. So using the both of these together just kind of turns your P4 into like a machine gun, like an autocannon, basically. So it's wild. It's super, super crazy high rate of fire. And then of course you've got your P4 command tank, which I think is solid. I would like to see more utility built into this unit or make it a little bit better and more interesting to pick than this Tiger tank. Kind of just feels like a panic call-in unit in like a 1v1 and 2v2 setting. And the Tiger tank is obviously the big daddy that everybody's trying to go for, and frankly everybody picks this battle group for it anyways, is try to get the Tiger tank. And Tiger tank is solid, but it is like most of the heavy tanks currently, it's very susceptible to some like airstrikes and like heavy, well, I guess like concentrated fire from different abilities. I've been making short work of these using the Tulip rocket, Panzerbane rockets, should say, decapitation strike. I've been cooking Tigers left, right, and center, and so they're not feeling too great right now under the circumstances. It could just be because the Polish battle group is a little bit more popular right now because it's new. But also, you know, the fact that battle group, you can just like nuke vehicles so quickly with decapitation strike. The Tiger Tech doesn't feel amazing to use. So overall, this battle group, it just feels like everything's kind of pigeonholed into a bunch of things that just aren't the most impactful on the game. And so for that reason, I'm actually going to put Breakthrough in the C category. As far as all of the different battle groups in Wehrmacht go, I'd say like Breakthrough is probably among the weakest. And I think a big part of it is related to how easy it is to lose your Tiger to different things. And also Grenadiers are just like not super impactful. Now there's still clear strengths with this, but like, man, with the, especially specifically with the Rifleman buffs, like this, this battle group, like the Assault Grenadiers, they just get cooked by Riflemen with bars. Even more than they did before, and they were already losing pretty bad to Riflemen with bars. But now it's like even more so. So I feel like, you know, pretty good, like, you know, okay, but chat making some good points. Breakthrough, rapid production for Werbles. Yeah, I mean, you can, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's, you know, that's probably like the best use of this battle group in a 1v1 context. I will say, like, this, the part of the reason I'm dropping this down is because if you can handle the Werbles, which is much easier to do now that you have like a stronger motor pool from US, for example. The Werble dive is like not nearly as effective as it was before, and it's still effective, but it's not as effective as it was before, because motor pool is so much better. And, you know, the UK forces, like, they've got like Panzerbane rockets, they've got the Polish guys, Canadians are pretty good at dealing with Werbles, and you can't really stall into tier 2.5 into Tiger like you could before because of the heavy tank change, where now the Tiger, like, if you want to get the Tiger, dude, what is it? 910 and 250 fuel, dude. Like, it's so expensive compared to what it was before. So stalling from like tier 2.5 into Tiger, which used to be the popular strategy for using this battle group, is no longer really on the table. And so I'd say, like, for all those reasons, we have to drop it down to C. It's not in a super powerful position at the moment, in my opinion. But, you know, I'm open to being wrong about that. I just feel like you're playing Wehrmacht, for the most part, you're almost always better picking something else over Breakthrough, for the most part. But that's just current state. It could change. We'll see. Moving on to Coastal. Boy, my opinion of Coastal has changed a lot. I'm not going to lie. Coastal it feels very different than when I started with it a while ago. And I think it's like, I've kind of figured out like how important it is to have a frontline bunker, how important it is to stay around those bunkers. And there were some changes in the most recent patch that are kind of like sleeper really strong that nobody's really talking about right now. The main one is like constructed defenses. So bunkers, fighting positions, whatever. They all provide significant damage resistance to the units inside. And now you're no longer risking losing a unit by keeping them fighting inside of a bunker to like the last bit of HP until the bunker collapses. Whereas before, like you could lose squad members, you could lose units, and it was kind of nasty. But like Coastals, dude, like obviously you're still susceptible to indirect, but like it's very respectable battle group now. Designate defensive line, great synergy, especially when you're the frontline player, like you're trying to hold middle position on a map or trying to anchor for your team. This battle group does that really effectively. Regardless of how much punishment you're taking from indirect, like this is a very, very solid battle group. Coastal's like a crazy economically economically powerful unit because of the free reinforcement you get from the bunkers, the ability to build healing, and they're quite, they're like, from a combat perspective, they're better than Grenadiers. I'll say that they are better than Grenadiers in general, as long as you're using them in cover. which is what you should be doing. And other augments within the battle group, like, so talking about heavy fortifications, I mean, you've got your different support bunker options, which are quite good. I've been more partial personally to designate defensive lines, so I can fast make my way to rapid fortifications and kind of just like drop bunkers in different places that I'm securing on the map and just be really annoying with them. And then I've been tending to go into bulwark, and then obviously artillery officer I like to get at some point. He's got some great buffs for your infantry. Dude, not to be underestimated how powerful the artillery observer's inspire combatant ability is, dude. Look at this. 20% accuracy, 25% rate of fire is insane. And this is not just for infantry. This is all surrounding units near the officer. So some really excellent augments that will help your army and your teammates' army in whether you're playing a team game or a 1v1. Pretty much everything in this battle group is like useful to some degree. And then of course, like you've got the Obiche, which is just like a squad wiping. It's a bit of an RNG cannon, but also squad wiping machine. Or you can go for coastal wall, which allows you to put up more bunkers, lay more mines, etc., etc. And obviously, you know, when you're playing with coastal squads, like your munition sink on this battle group is either going to be your designated artillery overwatch, which obviously I don't love. I don't use it that much. Or just like laying a whole bunch of mines with your coastal squads, which is what you probably should be doing. And there's great value in doing that. Now, the main weakness in this battle group is obviously coastals do not scale. They are like economically, they're like a pretty good unit because you can reimburse your casualties pretty well. But like if you take too many casualties, and most allied infantry are going to outscale these guys pretty bad. And then when you load in some indirect fire into the mix, like taking one mortar shell is just going to totally gimp this squad's combat capabilities against anything else. So having a few of them, spreading them out, staying mobile, and then using your vehicles to be aggressive. So playing like tier 2 heavy, tier 2.5 maybe, is a good way to play coastals in like 1v1s or in 2v2s. But yeah, difficult to make it work really well in, I think, probably in team games, or also if you're trying to play tier 3, it's pretty tough as well. But overall, like really solid battle group, I should say. I think I'm going to put them in B tier. I think last time I had them like way down here, so they've progressed quite a bit. I think they're just solid. They're like pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good. So yeah, I think B tier is pretty sufficient for where they are and how they've kind of, I mean, you know, it could just be like a little bit of a learning curve on my part as well. But overall, like I'm feeling pretty good about how this battle group has progressed. So very nice. Well done to you, Coastal Battle Group. All right. Moving on to Last Stand. Our brand new boy for Wehrmacht. All right. So I have some feedback about this battle group. On release, as many of you know, Stern Piles were wildly overpowered. And not only that, they were also bugged. So that people could like clone them by using this conversion ability and kind of just like spamming it on their keyboard or you know, doing whatever, using some kind of macro or just like getting really fast with pressing the keys. I don't know. But people were able to like clone their squads using kind of the transfer orders ability, which was really cringe. But anyway, after they fixed all that, they hotfixed the performance of the Stern Pioneer. I think they're in a much more fair position now than they were. I don't really consider them like a mainline substitute quite like I did prior to the most recent nerfs that they got. Namely to, what was it? They got the STG cost was increased from 50 munitions to 75, and the reinforced cost was increased from 30 to I think it was 35. So you don't want to bleed on these guys because they are expensive, and it's not like crazy easy to bleed on them because they do have 110 health each per man, so which is quite a bit more than most squads. So that, you know, they are on the kind of the beefier side for how early they come out. But yeah, not quite the mainline replacement that maybe they once were when they were initially released in like the first week or two or whatever it was. But obviously some really clear weaknesses, right? They small squad size, very squishy, no snares, I mean, they've got that little funny grenade ability, but honestly, I don't really find that you know what? That's not true. It's kind of useful if you're trying to flush an opponent out of a building, or if you get like a good flank on a team weapon, you're trying to take it down quickly. That could be pretty good. But for the most part, you want to be fighting with these guys at long range, and using them kind of like you would like an infantry section, just being very conservative, not overextending, because if you overextend, these guys are easy to lose on a per squad basis. But on that same note, they're also pretty easy to replace because they're only 200 manpower. So kind of, I don't know, mixed sort of feelings about Stern Pioneers. They've come a long way from where they started. They're a lot more balanced now. And I think they're in like a decent place. Not amazing, but solid. Very, very solid unit. Very respectable. Moving on to improvised barrage versus last ditch defenses. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I've used this maybe like a few times outside of testing, and then in like 3 or 4 different games out of maybe my 25 with this battle group. It's okay. It's like the part of the difficult thing about using this ability is it's random, right? So you just never know what you're gonna get. Like sometimes you get exactly what you need, but when I was using it, a lot of the time it was like the shells were missing, they were really low caliber, there was a lot of smoke that wasn't really doing anything. And then when I realized how good Nebelwerfer Overwatch Barrage was, and also not to mention how many other munitions abilities are in this battle group, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go for this. Combine that with the fact that last ditch defenses are pretty good. Like now the Panther term is okay, might be a little bit better in a team game context. I didn't get to use it that much in a team game context. It was really good for like setting up ambushes behind sight blockers, and then, you know, I'd kind of like use it to bait in an enemy tank or an enemy light vehicle, and then once I was able to kill it, then I'll kind of just tear down whatever is in front of the Panther term and use it as a basic turret. So it's pretty good for that. I love the propaganda towers though. These things are fire. These things are so good. Like reducing the rate of fire of enemy infantry and reducing their ability to capture territory makes it really, really defensible to fight within the radius of these propaganda towers. And the radius is pretty massive. Like your enemy is going to have to go pretty deep into your line to find these, as long as they're like kind of just touching the front line and not going too far forward. Your opponent's actually going to have to go poking around in the back line to try to cut these down, because otherwise their infantry, you know, whatever else, like they're going to be gimped trying to fight within the radius of this tower. And so I've been getting a ton of value out of these, and for that reason I've been going for last ditch defenses most of the time. Moving on to rapid salvage and immobilize and fortify. I recognize that rapid salvage was bugged at some point. I favored this. I know it's probably unpopular, but I actually really like this immobilize and fortify ability. The ability to just like use your vehicle for some shock value and then just like hunker it down in a really hard to reach spot that guards a crucial area is super nice. And reimbursing that fuel cost allows you to continue to catapult into more and more vehicles, or maybe teching up at higher and higher tier. So I've been really keen on going immobilize and fortify, and it's not like too hard to access. It's really only 4 CP. So what's been really common for me is like using a Werble on a really aggressive push, and then finding a nice place to just hunker it down and then churn out, you know, maybe another Werble or 2 Werbles, and then just make my way to tier 4. So it's pretty nice ability. I kind of like this. Rapid salvage also, you know, awesome value, great value on your Stern Pioneers. Being able to recover vehicles is always really, really nice. It does come out pretty late in terms of its CP cost, so we don't love that about it. But overall, like any salvageability is great value. So this battle group is benefiting greatly from that. Now we get into the interesting side of the battle group tree. So we've got Final Battle, and Final Battle is, I just think this thing is a liability. Now I totally get it, because if I had to guess, I have to imagine that when they were testing this, it was probably busted. It was probably just like, oh, they deal extra damage. They take, maybe it was like an equal amount of taken damage. I don't know. And then munitions for each casualty to you while it's active. But like your infantry takes so much extra damage, and your squads are already so squishy if you're playing with Sternpiles or with Grens. I could almost never find a circumstance in which it was advantageous to turn this on. And the fact that you have to turn it on for a minimum of a minute before you can turn it off again, it cost me. It cost me more times than it paid off as useful. So I don't love this. I almost never use it. I don't know about you guys. I'd like to hear if there's people, maybe in the comments you can share if like you've had success in using this in some way. But like, I feel like most of the time I'm just taking way more casualties than I need to. I'm bleeding a lot more. And I'm also losing units because things get wiped on retreat that I wouldn't normally expect to because of that 20% extra damage. So it's been pretty brutal trying to figure out how to use this effectively. And so I'm not a huge fan of the ability. That takes us to the Borgward and the Panzerfaust roll-up. Oh man. The Panzerfaust rollout it's expensive. It's expensive, but it's also great because let me tell you, if you can get Panzer Grenadiers with Panzerfausts on them or Jaegers with Shreks and Panzerfausts on them, dude, like you are cooking. You are like, your enemy is having such a hard time maneuvering around their vehicles when every single unit you've got is a Faust. Dude, like, you know, you got that like 3 or half HP Humber pulling up to like take out your sniper, and your sniper busts out a Panzerfaust and finishes his ass. There's no feeling like that. And I'm not gonna lie, that's never happened to me because I don't build snipers. Not despicable, but you see my point. The only thing about this is that it's expensive. Not only do you have to pay the munitions for the Panzerfaust, but you also have to pay to unlock this ability on all of your infantry. And I get it, like, there's a lot of munition sync abilities in this battle group, and they're intended to be used with Final Battle, but Final Battle is just not worth it, dude. It's just not. And so that leaves you kind of wanting in a lot of different areas where it's like you want to spend the munitions, but you don't have enough. And so you don't spend the munitions because you're not using Final Battle. And so I didn't find myself going for this that often. Instead, I started going for the Borgward. And let me tell you, this is trash. I have like a famous clip going around on Twitch right now where I use this at like a point blank distance on an enemy Greyhound, and it just missed every single shot at point blank. This thing is such a ridiculous RNG cannon. It's like, it cannot be used in a competitive context. It's so difficult. And so inconsistent. Like, I've had times where it will like engine damage 2 vehicles at max range, and other times, like I described, where it will just like whiff all 6 shots at point blank on an enemy vehicle. It's just, I don't know what to make of it. It's just, it's not competitive because it's so random. Now, what's amazing about this is the demo charge. Oh my God, dude. The demo charge is massive. And in team games, this is easily the most fun I've had with an Axis battle group in team games in a long time. Being able to plant demos on like the back of a building or around a corner and just using them to ambush like infantry blobs or vehicles or what have you is just, it's such a good feeling. But so it really is like a yin yang experience trying to play with the Borgward, where it's like the demos are awesome, but the rocket launcher on top is trash. So I don't know. It kind of lands somewhere in the middle for me. Moving on to Neb Overwatch and Scavenge Doctrine. Scavenge Doctrine's okay. I didn't find myself using this a ton because generally when my infantry were taking fights and then I would go and pick up these crates, like I didn't really want to continue fighting because a lot of the time, like if I've pushed off my opponent to the point where I'm able to overtake their position and take the crates, then my infantry was getting pretty low. And I didn't really want to continue fighting, and so like the potential value of scavenge crates was kind of like ruined from that. But I get it, like it's a cool ability, but I just like, I don't know, I wasn't having a ton of success using it. Maybe it's better on like Panzer Grenadier or something. Probably is, honestly, when I look at this. And you look at rate of fire and then refresh abilities, like yeah, I'd imagine Scavenge Doctrine's probably better for like Grenadiers. And then Nebo Overwatch. This is probably one of the best artillery, like time on target artillery abilities in the game. It comes on really, really fast, hits really hard on team weapons and infantry, and the area lasts a long time. It's like a minute, I think. So really awesome for area denial as well. And yeah, it's just absolutely devastating to team weapons and infantry. So really, really solid ability. So overall, like full of pretty good tools, some questionable ones in here as well. Gonna kind of land somewhere in the middle for me. I'd say this is leaning towards probably one of the better battle groups for Wehrmacht. I think for that reason, I'm probably gonna put it in A. It was S tier easily like 2 weeks ago. This was S tier by far, and I'm not including the bug. I'm just talking about stern piles with the way that they were performing before they got nerfed in terms of their cost and the STG upgrade. It was definitely S tier, but now it's probably just A. And I think there's more opportunity with like if the Borgward was more consistent and let me think. Maybe like improvised barrage, maybe final battle was made a little bit better. Like all those things together would definitely push it into the S tier. But there's like really good stuff in here. The immobilize and fortify is super strong, I think. The propaganda towers are insanely strong. Stern piles, best engineer unit in the game by far. No doubt about that. Best engineer by far. And then you've also got like nice late game ability in Nebelwerfer for Overwatch as well. So really, really solid options across the board for Last Stand. And I think it's a pretty competitive pick. So not bad. What's up, Miguel? We're just yapping. We're just yapping about the battle groups, dude. Okay, moving on to Luftwaffe. This is, in my opinion, probably, it might be my favorite. I don't know if it's the best. It's probably not the best. I have a little bit of bias, I think, coming into this. I've been having so much fun with Luftwaffe. It feels probably the strongest in the early and mid game, which is a big problem for Wehrmacht in general. Because of how weak the Grenadiers are. But man, some of their early game units like the Fallschirm Pioneer and then 2CP Fallschirmjägers really make up for it. Really versatile infantry, really solid with ambushing. Both the air to ground early game options are great. The strafing run's awesome. Probably one of the best uses of 50 munitions for the Wehrmacht in the early game that you can get. The ability to like quickly pin a machine gun or stop an infantry push using a Stuka strafing run is just amazing. And the fact that it's only slightly more than you'd pay for a grenade, it's just like, it's really, really nice. So moving on. Yeah, so Fallschirm Pioneers, these guys insanely good. Like the MG15 is, I think, 20 or 25% better than the Bren gun that the infantry section gets, which is just bananas when you consider this is an engineer unit. And you know what? I actually said that Sternpiles were the best engineer unit in the game, but I actually think it might be these guys. These guys, yeah, you know what? These guys are better. I take it back. These guys are better than Stern Pioneers. They're a little bit squishier, but like you've got out of combat heals. You can construct more with them. And the MG15 is just brutal. Like the MG15 is just like crazy strong for as an LMG upgrade. And the GRB is a nice choice as well if you're playing on a more urban map or playing against an opponent that's like blobbing a lot in cover. I've seen a lot of like some of my like opponents, Asian players, Korean players, they like love to blob these guys with GRBs. And probably because it's, you know, relatively easy to use, good burst damage, and obviously the ability to construct defenses, plant mines, sweep mines. They come with an onboard sweeper, which is really nice as well. So yeah, bar none, best engineer unit in the game, I think. Moving down to our second row here, we've got the recoilless gun paradrop. This is a pretty good. I find like there's lots of things to spend munitions on in this battle group, and my preferred strategy when I play Luftwaffe is to go tier 3 with a Stummel and packs when I need them, and so that kind of overlaps with the LG40. But I imagine if you're playing like a tier 2 build, that this would probably be a pretty good choice. Or if you're trying to like, you know, you're not worried about munitions and you're trying to churn out maybe more Fallschirmjägers, then I can see why you might want to skip on the pack and just build more of these guys and then drop an LG40 to support. But I do like the scalability of the pack. I prefer it, and I think it's a little bit better, obviously, as you move into the mid game. I also think, I don't know if this has more range than the LG40 or what else it is. But I know it has more damage, and it's obviously got the ambush bonus, which is nice as well. But yeah, overall, this is very good. The Flak 38 anti-air emplacement, I've been using this a fair bit in team games if my opponents are playing like Air Support Center or whatever, and I'm not playing tier 2. Like if I'm playing tier 3 and I don't have Werbles, then sometimes I'll get this Flak 38 anti-air emplacement. Or if my enemies are using a lot of loiters, I might use this. But otherwise, not that often. Like I'm not using this too much. Flak 36 is nice. It's got I still feel a little bit weird about how gimped the range is on this one compared to the 17 pounder. It's a lot shorter. I think the rate of fire on this Flak 36 is higher though, so maybe that's kind of like the trade-off that you're getting. But yeah, still preferring it over the infantry reserves. We kind of talked about, you know, I'm not really feeling these as much since we have now the ability to cash manpower points. And getting a lot of payoff economically from there. But yeah, not a huge fan of infantry reserves. I much rather have the Flak 36 in my pocket than burning all my CPs on this. On the other side of the tree, we talked about these two. We talked about Fallschirmjägers. These guys, I just like love them. They're so good. If you get good ambush bonuses, they'll pretty much beat everything. When you don't get ambush bonus is when you start to have a lot more problems with them. They're not very beefy, and they can't win straight fights against like barred riflemen, for example, without the ambush bonus. You really need to be able to cut down a couple of models and avoid bleeding in order to get good value out of these guys. And as long as you avoid bleeding, then you can churn out like 2 or 3 of these, and they become a big problem. They become very difficult for your opponent to deal with. And obviously good synergy as well with officer quarters. Moving on, talking about frag bombs and the Stuka loiter. Both of these abilities are amazing. The frag bombs, great at clearing team weapons or concentrated enemy positions with infantry and team weapons. And the Stuka loiter is just all around an incredible offensive tool. Great synergy with like pushing in with your vehicles and your infantry together. This is kind of like a great go augment ability. It's going to pin enemy infantry. It's going to deal a little bit of damage to enemy vehicles. Going to chip damage the enemy vehicles to allow you to pick away at them and apply extra pressure. So overall, I feel like this battle group has virtually like everything that you could possibly need, and really, really helps with the Wehrmacht early game, which in my opinion is one of the weakest points in the game for the Wehrmacht. And so for that reason, I'm actually going to put them all the way up here. Oh, S tier. You know, some of you guys might have different opinions, but like this has just been my personal experience with Luftwaffe. I feel so comfortable playing Luftwaffe Wehrmacht, whether it's team games, 1v1s, 2v2s. I feel like this battle group is virtually always good. There are some battle group matchups that aren't great for Luftwaffe. I think I was struggling earlier today. I was playing against a player who's using Canadians with the in combat heal, and I just like wasn't getting amazing value out of my ambushes. But yeah, overall, I feel like Luftwaffe very, very, very solid in the early game and awesome late game tools as well. And so for that reason, we're going to put him way up in the S tier as probably one of the best Wehrmacht Battlegroups in my opinion at the moment. Moving on to Mechanized. Ooh, Mechanized. Sweet, sweet Mechanized. One of the only remaining unscathed call-in only battle groups, as they say. So looking at the left side here, Mechanized armor, we've got our raid package, which gives us the ability to launch smoke canisters from all of our vehicles, which is fantastic. And then we've got our 2 call-in staples, the 8-Rad and the Stug Assault Group. I hardly ever see the 8-Rad anymore, honestly. I feel like it's probably because it comes a little bit too late to be useful. And frankly, it's kind of just risky to use because it's not the most beefy. And what it does in terms of like single target anti-infantry damage, there's a lot of overlap with like something like the Wirbelwind. And if you're playing like tier 3, for example, I find a lot of the time like something like the Stummel that's just going to chip away at units from a long distance to create opportunities for you to apply pressure with something like a Panzer Grenadier squad as you're closing the gap. The 8-Rad, I don't know, it just doesn't augment that or add to that too much, where the Stug is like kind of something that works perfectly with that play style because you can get a lot more aggressive and in the face of your opponent with the Stug. You've got the top pintle mounted machine gun, and if your opponent is crazy enough to try to set up an AT gun in front of you, not only is there a good chance that your Stug's going to be able to bounce those AT gun shots, but obviously when you're working with like a tier 3 build and you're playing with Panzer Grenadiers, you're going to be able to apply some pressure and probably get on top of that AT gun before he can pose a real threat to the Stug. And so I don't feel like the 8-Rad really adds too much to that, especially considering the fuel cost is almost the same. I don't think this is quite right. I think it's like 350, but still like very, very close in fuel cost. You're just getting a lot more value from the assault group call-in, I think. Then at the bottom, of course, you've got the producible Panther, and then you've got the call-in variant. The call-in variant basically allows you to play this battle group entirely from like tier 2 or tier 3 because you can basically just go Stug Assault Group straight into Panthers for the late game. And then just invest your fuel and everything in officer quarters and bunkers and healing and all that good stuff that you're going to need to carry you through the mid game as well. So yeah, this kind of remains like one of the only battle groups that can kind of go unscathed or without teching. You're kind of like you have all of the tools that you need in terms of units, which is really interesting. Looking on the right side at mechanized support, both of these options are great in the early game. The 251 and the 221, the healing aura is very nice on those. The out of combat heal that they can do on themselves, increasing the uptime of both vehicles. Spotting scopes is incredible on every single one of your vehicles. It's very, very useful. Pushing their vision range out to their shooting range, which is really, really nice for vehicles like Panzer IV and hull down, or Panthers trying to get those shots at max range. Like spotting scopes is really perfect for that. Moving down here, the Stormtrooper assault package has been pretty mediocre for a long time. I can't for the life of me find a good reason to pick this over just using the Stormtrooper as it is. So yeah, I really only use this as like a bypass to get to the late game abilities. Otherwise, the Wesp is just a way better choice. Wesp remains to be one of the only artillery, it might be the only one actually, that has 2 independent cooldowns for its barrages. The tracking barrage, which costs 50 munitions and fires 3 direct shells onto the target as long as you maintain vision. And then just a standard barrage option allows you to get a ton of value out of the Wesp as an SPG. and a great artillery unit. And like I said, it just rounds out this roster perfectly of armored units that this mechanized battle group can use. And frankly, you just don't need any tech for anything else. Everything that you need is in here. You've got indirect, you've got strong anti-infantry capabilities, strong anti-vehicle capabilities, and then you tack on these two awesome late game abilities in mechanized assault and zeroing artillery. And you've got like everything that you need to absolutely cook your opponent in any game mode at any level. Mechanized assault, incredible ability. Zeroing artillery, good for area denial or just destroying enemy in place positions. Personally, I still love mechanized assault. I think the infantry augments plus the extra shot to kill added to all of your vehicles is really, really nice. It makes for good aggressive pushes. And so for all those reasons, I'm going to put mechanized up here, way up in S tier. Let's go S tier mechanized. So we got two really solid choices for battle groups for Wehrmacht. And I think this applies both to team games and to 1v1s, 2v2s, small team game settings. Overall, Wehrmacht, really solid battle group roster. A lot of changes, I think, that since the last time I did this. I think Luftwaffe has gone up quite a bit. Breakthrough, I know, dropped down quite a bit. Coastal is up quite a bit. So lots of changes on the Wehrmacht side. Oh, and I almost forgot, dude. Last but not least, let's not forget one of the stars of the show of the last battle group drop, Terror. So Terror has seen some interesting changes as well. We'll talk about the changes first. So heavy gunnery and machine gun camouflage were swapped in terms of their CP cost. Heavy gunnery was moved to 0 and machine gun camouflage was increased to 1. And honestly, this was overdue. This was like so necessary because the ability to just like skulk around with camo MGs at 0 CP was the worst to deal with. And now, you know, you can kind of anticipate it a little bit better. You can have some more units on the field before these machine guns become too oppressive. I do think that they've kind of calmed down in terms of like how effective they were. They were quite like strong in previous patches. And I think a lot of that came from just like even just that first engagement and the ability for the machine gun to just like be in a defensive position, camoed, and you know, hiding from all of the enemy units and not knowing that it exists yet was really like the main problem. You always had to play as if this was potentially going to, you were potentially going to get hit by a camo MG, and it gave the Wehrmacht player a lot more space in the early game, especially at like high level where it's like, you know, running into this machine gun in the early game could cost you the first couple of minutes, which is going to have an impact on the whole game. So anyway, very necessary change. Glad that they made it. Heavy gunnery, I still don't really see this as like an interesting option. I feel like most of the time, if I want to like deter an enemy from pushing me, I'd rather just like deal damage to them. I can't really think of that many circumstances under which it would be better for me to just suppress them. It's so niche that like I still feel like machine gun camouflage is always better, largely because it gives you this like crazy DPS bonus on the machine gun itself. And this is like a one-time thing. It's a shared global cooldown, which I think is kind of weird as well. So I don't know. I feel like this ability needs some more work to be interesting or useful. Even if it was like a toggle ability per vehicle that maybe was like slightly worse and like not as effective at suppressing, but maybe like less munitions cost as well. I don't know. There's this. It needs something to be like more appealing as an option because it's still just not doing it for me. Even dropping it down in CPs. I think they decreased the CP cost of no quarter, if I'm not mistaken. They also increased the range, so more effective for non-PG units effectively. I think I said in the previous patch when I made the how-to for this battle group that the no quarter range was really most effective on Panzer Grenadiers, but now it's like once you're within mid-range, which is basically like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 steps forward, with your grenadiers or your Jaegers, they're also going to get the benefit of this. But again, it's also kind of a niche circumstance under which you're using this, where it's like it's only applying to units that are suppressed. And so the real value of this is like if you're at point blank, and they get suppressed, now you're cooking, because they don't get damage resistance because your squad is like within the radius that would be like within the radius that would prevent them from getting damage resistance from the suppression that they're getting. And now it's like, you know, they get a little bit of extra accuracy when the unit's already suppressed. I feel like most squads are going to be focusing on units that are not suppressed, because those are the ones that you want to deter from pushing in more. So I don't know, kind of like a niche sort of situation, and really it's just like the stepping stone to get to KT. I don't really like Defend the Fatherland right now. I don't really like these abilities that are like, oh, you have to lose squad members in order for this ability to be useful. I've just never been a fan of that. And so I'm not a fan of this really either. I don't really feel like either of these options are great, but they're kind of necessary to get to the KT. So it is what it is, right? Moving over to Terror Tactics. Interrogate, still very good. Contempt for the Weak, still very good. Both choices great. Whether you're playing PGs or Jaegers, I think both of these are awesome. I think Jaegers synergize a little bit better with Interrogate, and Contempt a little bit better with PGs. But overall, both choices are still very good regardless. And the Jericho Trumpet Loiter got a nice buff, which allows you to also get recon on the area that you use it, which is really nice, actually. It's a little expensive for a recon run, but the demoralize effect is also really nice, especially when you're trying to kind of combine it with an attack that you're doing. Leaflet drop still strong. I actually don't see this so much anymore. I see a lot more of the Jericho Trumpet Loiter instead, and it could be because of the reconnaissance effect. And then, of course, last but not least, the V1 Rocket Strike is devastating, as scary as ever. Still a very good choice. Solid in team games. KT, I don't know if we talked about. I don't have a lot of new things to say about the KT. I feel like all the heavy tanks are in kind of a weird spot where mass mediums in general are just better. They just are. Mass mediums are just better in the current meta than going for these heavies that are just like a huge liability. And not to mention, like, the fact that it still reduces the fuel income by 50%. Again, it just adds more liability into this big Hulk unit that's really incredibly slow and doesn't really have the ability to be like crazy aggressive, rather than just kind of anchor for things. But overall, yeah, like the unit, it's a great heavy tank. It's a novel heavy tank. Love to see it. But I feel like most of the time, honestly, I'd rather have like 2 or 3 P4s. Well, probably 3. I'd rather have 3 P4s than this thing. And obviously, the heavy tank stall is no longer an option. Like, if you've watched my BG videos, look at the cost on this thing now. It's ridiculous. You're going to be able to access it faster if you go for tier 4, a little bit faster. But like, yeah, the whole like tier 2 stall call and into call-in strategy, that's kind of behind us now. And I feel like all the heavy tanks are kind of suffering from the same problem. Like the Prince, this thing, the Pershing, they all feel like they come out too late. And so I think it's going to take some more time before we get more of this more heavy tank play from the each of the factions. And the KT is no difference. If anything, it's actually worse off because of the 50% fuel income reduction. Pretty catastrophic, KT. So overall, I think that puts the Terror Battle Group probably in the B category. It's like, you know, it's pretty good. It's got some decent options, but like I feel like a lot of the things in it, they're kind of struggling right now. Like this was pushing it up a lot. I'd say this was probably pushing it up into A tier. Instead of B, but you know, with the nerfs to this, and then just like, you know, heavy gunnery doesn't feel useful. These 2 abilities don't feel useful. The KT is like, you know, it's okay. But yeah, overall, like I feel like there's a lot, really mixed bag of like abilities and tools inside this battle group. Some things are great, like some things are really good, but others, I'd say like there's a lot of mediocre things, and so we're just gonna plant that right smack dab in the middle in B tier. Okay, so whew, we're almost there. Getting down to the DAK battle groups. We're starting off with a burner, dude. Burner battle group. Starting with armored support. DAK has seen some wild changes this patch. And I think, depending on who you ask, arguably the strongest faction of this patch. Depends on the context, but I'd say probably in team games for sure, with the armory changes and some of the other updates that were made to their roster, combined arms change, some of the other things in there. I'd say like DAK is in a really, really good spot, and their battle groups add a decent amount of flavor to what they can do, but there's so much like onboard power in the DAK battle group. I feel like or the DAK faction, I should say. I feel like the battle groups don't add as much as they used to, and as much as they do to the other faction. Anyway, that's kind of just a side commentary. Let's talk about armored support. So for armored support, you got vehicle awareness. This is all right. I don't tend to use it because it competes with salvage kits, and salvage kits with DAK is just amazing because everything in your roster, virtually outside of the infantry, obviously, is like you're going to salvage it at some point. And so being able to do this on your main lines, on your panzer piles, really, really nice, and allows you to keep the tempo up through the game, regardless of whether you're losing units or killing them. You're still going to be able to get the benefit of salvaging them, and so this is a great opener for the support and air power side. Panzerstorm, highly underrated ability. I don't see this nearly enough, dude. Like the acceleration, speed bonuses, rotation rate, immunity to engine criticals is absolutely bonkers. And it allows for some crazy dives, especially if you're doing like a lot of P3, like P3 heavy builds. You can just get really, really aggressive with this ability and kind of just like reckless, because you don't have to worry about minefields. You don't have to worry about infantry snares. There's no crew shocks that are happening to you. All that stuff is negated by this ability. And so, you know, for 100 munitions, easily one of the best and strongest abilities on this patch. You're also paired with going down into your Stuka dive bomb and Stuka anti-tank loiter. The dive bomb, probably the highest single target damage, like dropped, I don't know what to call it, airstrike. Highest single target damage airstrike, maybe in the game. As good as the V1, almost borderline as good as the V1, except it doesn't have that second damage instance. It's just perfect. This thing is perfect for decrewing team weapons. If you can catch them out and get behind them, the Stuka arrives so quickly, the blast radius on the bomb is so big, it's almost impossible to avoid this if it's dropped directly on your head. And so this is a great tool to pair with like big dives from your vehicles using Panzerstorm. Alternatively, if you're playing more you're playing more into enemy vehicles, the Stuka anti-tank loiter probably remains the best consistent anti-tank loiter ability. Probably a little bit more consistent in terms of its damage than the rocket hawker loiter from Air and Sea Battlegroup. Much more consistently hitting enemy vehicles, I would say. But the hawkers are great at dealing with infantry blobs because they get a little bit of scatter on the rockets. So this is also a great ability to pair with like a armored dive, Panzerstorm push. The anti-tank loiter is going to help you make short work of enemy vehicles. On the armored warfare side, we've got veteran gunners and superior fire drills. Veteran gunners feeling pretty redundant with tungsten rounds at the moment. I don't really think I see anybody going for this still, but maybe, you know, I might be the only one that's not really using this very much. I much prefer superior fire drills. The extra coaxial and whole machine gun damage on your P3s is super nice and allows you to laser down those pesky infantrymen that are trying to push in and snare you, or the ones that you're chasing on retreat. Flampanzer call-in as strong as ever, especially in a 1v1 and 2v2 context, where you can kind of weave this into a nice tier 2.5 build, and add some nice beef to your roster, as well as great chasing potential, which some of the other vehicles in the tier 2.5 roster don't have much of. 8-Rad, it does, but obviously it also has a limited window for that because it has less armor and less HP than something like the Flampanzer. So this is all still a very solid unit. And then you've got Battlefield Salvage. I still almost never see this. I think it's probably too expensive for what it does and too niche. I think this ability probably needs a rework, honestly. And then you got the Command Panzer IV medium tank. This has some awesome abilities that synergize with all of the DAK vehicles, and is a great kind of capstone unit to a roster if you're getting close to pop cap. This is like really nice. I do think it's a little bit late in terms of CPs. I think, what is it, 8? Yeah, it's 8 CPs, which is pretty late. A little bit later than the Wehrmacht command tank. But still very solid choice all around. So yeah, overall, like this, all of this stuff just augments and builds on the strengths, the existing strengths of DAK so well that for me personally, I think this battle group is in the OP category, or not OP, S tier category. As far as DAK goes, this is easily the best, most consistently the best battle group for DAK all around. And so I think for those reasons, we're going to put it up into the S tier. Moving on to infantry. What do we got here? Italian infantry? What the hell is this one called? I always get these two mixed up. Italian combined arms, excuse me. This one is cooked, you guys. this battle group is toast. So Bersaglieri have just been like power crept really hard by riflemen, which is where they were kind of the strongest. And then with some of the changes to like combined arms and the armory inside of the DAK armory, like VS, you used to be able to load up on all your upgrades, right? And Bersaglieri were great because you could kite, but now with like the rifleman range increase and just in general, like the meta, like I haven't seen anybody really using these guys super well. Most of the time they're just getting run over by everything. They're just getting destroyed by sections. After Vet 2, they're getting cooked by riflemen with bars. Despite their mobility, they just like can't really stand up in combat anymore. And so I feel like virtually every other DAK strategy is better than this battle group. For that reason, I'm not going to go into a crazy amount of detail about all this stuff, but put simply, Bersaglieri, like I just said, they're just cooked. Bolster, nah. Vehicles, this is like okay, you know, this is an okay pass, but honestly, this is kind of the same as like what PGs have built into their Vet 1, so it's like, what's the point? Bredas, you know, Force Recon, okay, big deal. Like for an end game recon ability, 7.5 extra vision, like who cares? Nothing to write home about. Sea Movente, this unit is a meme. I think most casemates are a meme, and this one's no different. Caro, since the nerf and change to a mandatory MG upgrade, this is not great. Surprisingly, the strafing run is actually still quite good as an ability. This is one of the ones that's remained useful, as has artillery cover is like a very strong late game ability. So, I mean, if you're playing that battle group for these things and nothing else, it's actually like not that bad. These are two great munition sinks inside this. And then you know, if you're playing, I guess if you're playing maybe tier 2 heavy with martyrs, maybe Pact of Steel would make sense. But yeah, honestly, like when I look at like say armored support, for example, and then my ability to like salvage my destroyed vehicles or my opponent's destroyed vehicles, it's like kind of makes up for this Pact of Steel option. So yeah, I just feel like there's really not enough that's really compelling in this battle group to make it worthwhile anymore. And so, we're gonna put it in D tier, unfortunately. So, you know, I think it was like way up here last time I did this, and it was because Bersaglieri were in such a good spot. But with the power creeping of all the other allied main lines, and then the changes to the Caro making it a little bit worse when it comes out, plus the call-in nerf, where call-ins now, there's 2 minutes in between call-ins that you're allowed to do, so you can't like tempo build Caros anymore. It's just like, it's cooked. Like, I just don't think it's really super useful anymore. But hey, if you feel differently in the comments, I'd be eager to hear. Correct me if I'm wrong. Moving on to Italian infantry. I love what they did to this one, dude. They reworked it. They reworked this battle group. They shuffled things around, and I think it's in a much healthier place for this battle group overall. So starting out, Guastatories strong as ever, right where they were last patch. No major differences there with the Guastatories. Still a very, very strong, great scaling anti-infantry bulwark unit. Now they've shuffled things around a little bit. So now they've put territory booby traps next to sound the alarm. And I love both of these options. These are great. Like being able to plant booby traps and use registered artillery, they used to compete with each other. And that made me really sad because it felt like, you know, I two great abilities and I had to toss up like which one I wanted to pick. Now I can have both. Now I am giving up defensive operations, which I actually think defensive operations compared with registered artillery is actually a nice and interesting choice, because you can either choose to like hunker down and kind of like be able to hold your positions that way, or you use artillery in a defensive manner, and it makes sense that you don't have both. So I really like that. Cannone is kind of the same, sort of similar circumstances that it was before. Nothing really majorly different there. I still think this unit is way better in small game settings than it is in large games. So like 1v1s and 2v2s. But I think 3s and 4s, it's kind of not a great choice. It's, you know, the auto fire is pretty short range. The maps are usually a lot bigger, so there's a lot more space to move around and avoid the Cannone auto fire. And the barrage is nothing to write home about really as far as the howitzer goes. There are better howitzers out there, so nothing huge on the team game side for that. Looking at defensive warfare, territory booby traps, sound the alarm. This is great, and they also made it so that this benefits friendly infantry, so like teammates infantry as well, which is really awesome. Really, really happy that they made this change. And moving on to the L6. So the L6 is now competing with prepared positions, which is interesting because now you're kind of choosing between, okay, do I want an aggressive light tank, or do I want to play more defensive in going for prepared positions and getting that reduced incoming damage on my team weapons? And I'll say, like, while I'm happy that they took the L6 call-in from 2 tanks to 1, they really gutted this thing. Like, it's now it requires the flamethrower upgrade is you need either tier 1.5 or tier 2 to access the flamer upgrade. And at that point, you've kind of missed your shock value window to make really good use of this, because that's not usually coming out until like around 3 CP time, and this thing comes out around 2. So the only use case that I can really see for this being like decently useful is if you're playing like flak with tier 1, and then you're getting one of these to like help you chase down a Humber or something. Like it's so specific, the usefulness of it. I feel like, you know, it's just not really in a great spot at the moment. How to fix it, I don't really want to speculate. I do think it's also a little too expensive. Like it's 40 fuel I think the Humber's like 35, and I don't know, I think it'd probably be fair if it was brought down to that amount, because prior to the Flamer upgrade, it does almost nothing to infantry. So anyway, I'm happy that they reduced it to only 1 tank instead of 2. But it does feel like they also kind of gutted it a bit too much with gating the anti-infantry flamethrower behind the tier structures, tier 1.5 or tier 2. Obiche barrage is strong as ever. This is really, really good at destroying enemy emplacements or enemy defensive positions. Propaganda war, I almost never see, probably because it's competing with this more than anything. Just not really a compelling choice. And frankly, the what's that, like, propaganda leaflet drop from the Terror Battlegroup is just a way better version of this. So I can understand why nobody's picking that. So yeah, overall, like, Italian infantry, really like the rework, really like the adjustments. The nerfs to the tankette is like pretty substantial, but honestly not like the end of the world. I still think there's plenty of really useful abilities in this battle group. And so we're going to put it way up in the A tier. I think like prepared positions is really solid. The Guastatori are still as strong as ever. Being able to go booby traps and registered artillery or like sound the alarm. All of these abilities are great munition sinks that add to your defensive capabilities and your ability to hold down territory. And then prepared positions just like it gives you so much onboard strength and resistance to artillery fire on your team weapons. This is going to be really useful for keeping like your packs alive or your Flak 36 or whatever else. MG teams even. So yeah, this is also a really nice ability. Yeah, L6 got kind of gutted, but still overall, like so many other benefits in the battle group, it's still like a great contender and probably in the A category. So moving on to the Kriegsmarine. Kriegsmarine, dude, this is the new one. And honestly, been waffling on this battle group for a while. Like I've I played a lot. I probably played like 50 games of this battle group. Now it's probably an exaggeration. Maybe like 30. I've been playing a lot of this battle group and trying desperately to figure it out. And I think I've made some progress. I still think I have some more fleshing out to do. And that's actually, in case you guys are wondering, that's part of the reason I haven't completed how-tos for this battle group and for Last Stand. Well, there's actually 2 reasons. One, because I'm not 100% comfortable that I like really know them well enough to make an informational video. And 2, my replays keep getting nuked by the hot fixes, so I keep like collecting good games that I want to put into videos and show you guys, and then they get nuked by the patch. But that's neither here nor there. Talking about the Kriegsmarine Battlegroup, the Kriegsmariner squad, these guys are really solid at anti-infantry duty specifically. But anything outside of that, not so good. Not great. They are really squishy. They have no damage resistance that's built into them. They don't get any with veterancy. And the real problems start to show up specifically with how damage caps work in this game. So when I talk about damage caps, I'm talking about area of effect weapons that hit infantry squads and only deal damage to a certain number of models. Sorry, I actually used the incorrect term. What I meant was model caps. So model caps, basically most AoE weapons, mortars, artillery, etc., have a model cap of 4. Grenades also have a model cap of 4. And what that means is when you have a squad that's like a 5-man squad and they get direct hit by an artillery shell, only 4 guys actually take damage. The other guy actually takes no damage. But when you're playing with Kriegs, they all take damage because there's only 4 of them. So as much as I've been having a good time, like microing them against infantry, using them in cover, they get some great received accuracy bonuses that make them really durable against small arms specifically later on. But they just get absolutely nuked by artillery and tanks and everything else, unlike other infantry that don't have to deal with these model cap shenanigans. So Kriegsmarines, like, they're okay. Like, they're just like, they're not amazing. They are, like, you know, the damage profile on them is pretty good. The synergy that they have with the supply points and the crates is pretty good. But man, like, I lose so many of these squads. I probably lose more of this squad in the last, I don't know, however long it's been since the patch. I've probably lost more of this squad than like all my other squads combined, it feels like, because they just get nuked by things. And there's like, you don't see it coming, you know, you just get hit by a stray artillery shell and all of a sudden your Krieg squad is at like
actually worst teammate
10%
than anyone I've ever played with, because he thinks he's good.
Yeah, thanks for that, Krip. Moving on. Sorry. Moving on to talking about the Stuka Overflight and Starburst Flares. So Stuka Overflight, decent like ability, a little bit too random. A little bit too like the dropping of the bombs is the scatter on it's a little too unpredictable. It's funny, I actually just saw Relic put up a little short of this ability, and it's like they couldn't even get the showcase correct for it. They had like this Churchill that was driving down a road, and somebody used this ability on the Churchill, and it just like missed all of the bombs, but it blew them up anyways. so they just kind of blew up the Churchill anyways. But yeah, it just like it didn't showcase the ability super well. On the other hand, the Starburst Flares are amazing. This is like one of the best recon abilities, and DAK, I don't think they have any other flare abilities. And the thing that I want to call it specifically about this side is that the Starburst Flares and Naval Intervention are not competing with each other, which means you can use, this is the only battle group that has a flare combined with an off-map barrage that can be called on the same position and used together to synergize with each other. Because usually, like, if you're trying to use a naval battery or something, some big off-map artillery, you need someone else to do some recon for you first. But in this case, you don't have to do that because you have both available to you. And it's a little expensive on munitions, but most of the time, if it means that you're nuking like a howitzer position or something like that, it's like really, really good. On the other side, you've got the Fritz bomb. And I'd say like this is, from what I've seen, it's a little hard to control. I think people were having a little bit of a hard time figuring out how to drive this thing at first. It's not really obvious what you're supposed to do. You got to select it like from your unit tree. I know I was struggling with like trying to click on the icon or on the UI based on where it was coming in to try to steer it, but it wasn't working. Anyway, this thing seems to be most useful at killing team weapons or really slow tanks like the Churchill or the Black Prince, Croc, vehicles like that. That's where I've seen the most consistent good use of this ability. So it's quite good for that. But trying to kill medium tanks with it, like you're gonna have a really hard time trying to steer this in and actually hit medium tanks. So I wouldn't be using it for that. I tend to generally go for SLD Starburst Flares, and then Naval Intervention makes for great setup for attacks, especially because the smoke that drops, right? Like even if I miss a little bit on the Naval Intervention, don't, you know, knock out all the targets that I want to, the smoke disruption combined with a big like blitzkrieg armored push is really, really nice. Moving on to the right side, so logistics operations, we got designate resupply point, and on this is obviously your hardpoint construction system. I like this. It's kind of growing on me. The crates are a little annoying to like micro. It's definitely like a significant micro tax to like get the crates and collect them and then like put them on the right units. But it's growing on me. I'm kind of figuring it out. Just takes some getting used to. Between supply reserves and improved hardpoints, I actually think both of these are good. And I'm noticing with DAK, you tend to float a lot more manpower now. So like the supply reserves is actually not a bad choice if you're planning on just trying to like load up on crates. especially if you're really trying to lean into like getting extra munitions for your abilities on the right side of the tree. And then improve hard points is also excellent. Between the extra health that you get and then the ability to equip your hard points with flak term, which allows you to take out enemy aircraft that are flying overhead. Could be ASC runs that you're worried about that the multiple flaks will deal with pretty handily. And also the ability to defend your territory points really nicely. And the economy of this side of the battle group with the hard points is really nice because you can basically spend 50 munitions plus 150 manpower to get yourself a cache instead of the usual 200 manpower. And based on like the crate system, it's really nice. Like there's a great synergy, economic synergy that happens between the hard points and the caches that you're able to build using the hard points as well. As for the last options, between supply interdiction and strategic mobility, I've been preferring supply interdiction. The extra effects on the crates, as well as being able to accumulate more of them, allows you a lot more uptime on your units and specifically on your vehicles, I've noticed. Which I've enjoyed quite a bit. Now, the strategic mobility is powerful as well. I'd say this is probably even better in 4v4 games where you can get a lot of hard points up because you allow a lot more maneuverability for your teammates' units and vehicles as they kind of move across the map. But both of these very good. Supply interdiction I'm tending to prefer in like the 1v1 and the 2v2 setting, but strategic mobility I can see having some great use in larger team game settings as well. So overall, as for the Kriegsmarine Battlegroup, despite the Kriegsmarine, in my opinion, being a bit of a lackluster unit, I still think this is like a very solid battlegroup. Very decent battlegroup. Lots of great interactions happening here. Lots of great abilities. The only DAK recon flare ability. It's all very solid. It all complements what DAK does already very well, with more power and more structure, I think, which is one of the things that DAK is missing a little bit of, especially when you're playing so vehicle heavy. But it's good. It's good. So yeah, great battle group. Gonna put it up in the A tier. Moving on to Panzerjaeger Command as we're coming close to the end here of our battle group overview. So, Panzerjaeger Command. This had some interesting implications considering the changes to combined arms. It also had some bugs that needed to be ironed out. And I actually think it's still in a very solid spot despite the changes. But there are also some clear weaknesses now that have been highlighted in the most recent update. So, the first one, minefields remain strong as ever, as does blockade equipment. Not a lot of differences happening here in terms of the update. Both of these great at layering in defenses or layering in traps for your opponents. On the tank hunting, actually no, we'll come back to that. We got to keep moving down the tree for structure's sake. Defensive positions, this is really nice now with the combined arms change. You can play a lot more infantry heavy, and getting the combined arms movement speed in friendly territory. I have to imagine this is probably pretty useful in 4v4s. I only played with it like twice in a 4v4 game, and it felt really nice to get my infantry back on the front line much more quickly because they were running straight from base, getting that combined arms bonus all the way in. I know they upgraded early warning a little bit, which is kind of nice as well. But there is a little bit of overlap here with the the Kettenkrad upgrade, which is pretty popular in a team game setting. And honestly, because it competes with defensive positions, I still don't find myself using this very much. Thank God they changed the butterfly bombs, dude. Like, being able to drop these in the fog was so toxic. Still very strong, as they should be. It's pretty expensive ability. But yeah, not nearly as egregious, like dropping it on retreat path for enemy units. Like, it was so annoying. So I'm really glad that they fixed this and require vision now to drop this. But it does carve some of the power out of this ability. And so I think, like, going to take that into consideration when we consider the placement on the chart. When we look at the tank hunting side, so Panzerjaegers now, because they don't start with the camo, it actually has a significant impact on tank busters. Because previously you could set some pretty egregious traps with tank busters at vet 0, but now it's like you really got to put the work in to get the veterancy on your Panzerjaegers before you're going to start getting some value out of this. And I actually love this dynamic a lot because it's making people reconsider this GRB grenade launcher upgrade. You can see here the upgrade increases the penetration of all GRB launcher variants by 300%, making them more effective against light vehicles. And I was like, that sounds like a meme. But then, like, when I was playing against the Dingo, when I was playing against the Jeep, like, the GRB hits would completely flip the engagement on its head, and I would be able to, like, get quick kills on my opponent's Dingo or my opponent's Jeep when I hadn't even considered this before because of how strong tank busters was. So I actually think like this is probably underrated in terms of an ability. And I think I've seen a fair bit of this in team games as well. But I thought it was pretty interesting that, this having to reconsider this ability now that tank busters has got kind of an indirect nerf was very nice. So happy about the change. Crew shock tactics. This actually got a huge indirect buff because crew shock was changed. Crew shock was increased. So you can see here, so the acceleration of the speed part we already knew about, but they layered in an additional minus 33% rate of fire, which really bolsters your vehicle's dueling capabilities. Because if you're using this on like a P3 in a 1v1, for example, you're just going to cook your opponent because you're crushing their rate of fire for 7.5 seconds when using this ability. And so in a dueling situation, like this is incredibly useful and much stronger than it was last patch through no changes onto the ability itself. So this is great. This is really nice change. Now, the entry abilities, Elephant, Tank Destroyer, I've seen this a handful of times. Honestly, I still feel like this thing is probably not as strong as it needs to be, personally, to make it an interesting or a valuable choice. But correct me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. I hardly see this thing in 4v4s. I've seen it in 2v2 in maybe the last 100 games that I've played, despite players consistently using this battle group. And I know the anti-tank Overwatch got a bit of a nerf to its, I think it's the first shell arrival time, but the time in between volleys has also increased. So I think this ability got a bit of a nerf as well. So yeah, the entry ability is looking a little bit lackluster here for the Panzerjaeger Command Battlegroup, but overall, like, still a solid choice, lots of good options. Crew shock tactics is still in there. Both of these are really excellent early game options as far as the passives go. Combined arms is nice. Butterfly mines are still very strong, very annoying, and takes a long time to clear. So all still very good options, very good augments to this battle group. But I am probably going to put it into the B tier. And I think largely because of the poor performance of some of the late game options now, outside of the butterfly mines, like I don't see a lot of people using anti-tank Overwatch. I don't hardly see anyone using the Elephant Tank Destroyer. Crew shock tactics carrying the day pretty well. I think, there's some good early game power in this battle group, but it kind of falls off going into the late game is kind of what I'm seeing here. So yeah, take my take with a grain of salt, but my opinion, probably in the B category. And then we've got lowly little fella Battlefield Espionage. And I feel like this battle group is getting left in the dust a little bit with all the changes and updates to some of the other battle groups and just power creep on some units. I think the stealth mechanic change that they made a while ago was the right thing to do. But it makes piloting this battle group, I think, probably a little bit too challenging and difficult. And so I think that's why it's kind of falling out of favor and popularity. Now, there are some great components to it still. I think the Goliath is pretty good. I think it could probably do with a little bit more rotation speed and a little bit more acceleration so that it's easier to set up. But yeah, I'd say like the stealth mechanics within this battle group are kind of gipped, and I'm not mad about it. Like I'm actually really happy about it. But it really like it sapped a lot of the power out of this battle group. Anti-tank munitions still decently strong, and advanced ambush training still decently strong. Operation Scorpion was actually, I think, a little bit underrated for a while, and then people started using. I'm actually still seeing it a fair bit. People using this ability to kind of like, you know, go big, trade out on their opponent's vehicles, and then basically convert that into a tempo advantage where they're kind of like maybe trading with their opponent, but because they're taking losses with Operation Scorpion, they're coming out on top economically. On the other hand, you've got these beacons here. The Intel Disruption Beacon probably become a lot less popular recently. Sector Subterfuge is all right. I'd say like the tunnels probably do this a little bit better, and they also have a lot more utilities. So it's kind of like taking a little bit of the shine away from this ability within this battle group. Plunder, as cool as it is, still kind of like limited value, I would say. The value isn't like crazy. Now PG is like pretty solid, but now with like veteran squad leaders competing with one of the most core vehicle upgrades for the DAK in the second row, it's just like really hard to justify investing that much into DAK infantry. But I don't know. I also think that's generally just a problem with like medium tanks and how the medium tanks scale and get kind of too good as the game goes on. And then you've also got transfer depots. Now they did give a couple of buffs to the transfer depots as well, reducing the cost a little bit. And then I think they fixed some of the conversion rates, which is pretty good. And then of course you got your two late game abilities down here. You got Disruption Operation and Firestorm. Not the strongest late game or end game abilities, but not negligible either. Disruption Operation does feel a little bit strange to use because of the interactions between like vision and how it affects minimap vision as well. But still like pretty solid ability, as well as Firestorm. I've actually seen a lot more friendly fire with Firestorm, it feels like, recently than useful uses of it. But yeah, overall, I'd say this battle group probably needs some work. The stealth mechanic probably needs some work. I would sooner like to see some of the ambush related stuff just go into like cover bounding that you have to do with other infantry units anyways. I think it's like the fact that you have to be in the beacon radius and you have to bound from cover to cover is just like, it's a little bit too much micro tax for people to get good value out of. So maybe if they just made it like, I don't know, there was some kind of package upgrade that you could give your units that allowed them to get that like camo and in cover mechanic or something like that. I don't know. That might bring some of the interest for me back into this battle group. But yeah, I'd say based on everything we just talked about, I'm probably going to put it in the C category. You know, the Goliaths are still pretty fun. There's some like good memes in this. Operation Scorpion can be okay from time to time, but overall, I'd say as far as all the DAK battle groups go, it's probably near the bottom. Still more useful than Italian combined arms, in my opinion, with some of the niche little pieces of it and like the ability to use Goliaths and some of the late game abilities. But overall, like nothing to write home about. So there we have it, dudes. My nerds, we finished our battle group tier list update. Only one DAK battle group got S. Yeah. I'd say like the reason for that is DAK is already inherently strong, like I talked about, and the strength doesn't come from the battle groups themselves. It comes more from like the default roster and the armory upgrades. And so I don't really think that there's a need, like really it's the power of DAK is not coming in these other battle groups. It's just in the roster as it is. all these are kind of like nice little augments, but like some of these battle groups, dude, they completely change the way that you're able to play the game and play the faction, I should say. And that's just not really the case with DAK. DAK still kind of plays the same way no matter what, it feels like. The battle groups don't have that much of an impact on it. I'd say like among the most impactful ones are probably these three, and that's why they're near the top. But as for these near the bottom, like they're not going to have that much of an impact, in my opinion. So take my opinions with a grain of salt. Now, I'd say this list is probably optimized for 1v1 and 2v2. Okay, so if I had to do this again for 4v4s, and probably was going to reset all of these. Okay, so let's do Air and Sea, still probably like in the pretty mediocre tier. Airborne, I'd say, is probably in the same category. Just too many liabilities there. Let's say Ranger Battlegroup, probably an A tier in the right hands. The howitzers and the Rangers can be pretty impressive. There is some map dependency associated with this. I think Armored Battlegroup probably drops down a tier because you're missing out on some of the late game off map and like airstrike abilities that some of the other battle groups have. Also, like some of the strength of artillery they don't really have in Armored Battlegroup, so probably in the B tier. Armored Support's still S tier easily. Aussies probably A, somewhere in there. I don't know if any of the British battle groups I'd consider S tier in team games. I'm gonna put it in A. That's just what my gut tells me. Espionage, probably trash, probably a meme. Breakthrough, C, Coastal. I actually feel like this is decent in team games, to be honest. I'm gonna put it in B. Canadians, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really feel strongly about like putting this in S. I feel more like it's A, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Archer and 70 pounder great in 4s. Yeah, you guys really think it's S tier? I feel like there should be at least one UK battle group in S tier. I do feel like Canadians drops down a little bit because Croc probably not as strong in a 4v4 setting. Because like the martyrs and all that nonsense, but I also feel like the abilities are really good, so I don't know, I'm gonna keep it in A. Heavy weapons with weapon support center, maybe A. Probably in the right hands, weapon support center, probably A tier. Would be surprised. Indian, I really don't think this is good. I still think this is really bad. Combined arms, definitely bad. This battle group is probably good. Luftwaffe, I still think Luftwaffe is really great. I still think Luftwaffe is really good. Mechanized, really good. Panzerjaeger Command, okay. Spec Ops, definitely up there. Yeah. That. This is up here. Partisans, it's still up there. Krieg, still strong. Last Stand probably drops a little bit as you go up into like the team games more, relative to the strength of the other battle groups. I'm gonna put it in B. This feels right to me. This feels right for 4v4s. Wow, nerds, we freaking did it. So there you have it. We got a couple different variations of the tier list. Sorry, I kind of blew through that second part, but here's like your 4v4 big team game snapshot. This is just my opinion. These are kind of the strength levels of the different battle groups. So I hope you nerds found that helpful. I hope you learned something from it, and let me know what you want to see next.